I'm Alan Chinching, 12 years old, and I live in a small village at the edge of a great forest. My family are serfs. We farm and hunt for the local baron, and most of what we catch goes straight to him. 7 days ago, I was out digging herbs near the forest with 3 other kids. We'd been working all morning under the burning sun. On our way back, a massive wild boar, a ranked magical beast, burst out of the trees. It was bigger than a calf, with tusks like curved blades and fire glowing in its eyes. We ran, but it was too fast. One boy was gored through the chest and died instantly. Another had his skull crushed. I tripped and cracked my head on a rock. As everything went dark, something clicked open inside me. A flood of memories poured in. Tall buildings, cars, phones, a man sitting in a cubicle staring at a screen. That was me. My name was Chin Mo, and I had already lived and died once before in another world. Right before I blacked out completely, I heard a cold, emotionless voice. Daily intelligence system activating. Host in critical condition. Force protection engaged. I woke up 3 days later. My mother was beside me, eyes red from crying. My older brother had begged favors from the knight captain and the baron's steward, going deep into debt just to get a tiny bottle of healing potion for me. That potion saved my life. Now I have this system in my head. Every day at midnight, it gives me 3 pieces of information based on my fate and connections. Most of it is small stuff. This morning it told me, the village chief's rooster will crow at dawn, my family's arrows are too worn down to hunt properly, and a squirrel will fall unconscious from the old oak tree around noon. So I got up at first light and started sharpening arrowheads. 9 of them, lined up neat and gleaming by the time I finished. My father came home empty-handed. He'd spotted a deer but couldn't bring it down. His arrowheads were too dull to pierce the hide. I picked up my 9 freshly sharpened heads and put them in his hand. Use these tomorrow, I said. He looked at the arrowheads, then at me, and gave my bony shoulder a quiet pat. The next morning, I helped my mother make breakfast, then grabbed a chopping knife and a basket and headed out. I told her I was going to collect firewood near the forest edge. She didn't ask more. The air was cool and fresh with dew. I walked fast along the familiar path, thinking about yesterday's 3rd piece of intelligence. Around noon, a squirrel will fall unconscious from the old oak tree. I knew which tree it meant. There was only one that could be called the old oak, a massive thing, trunk so wide 2 people couldn't wrap their arms around it. I'd picked up acorns there before. I got there early and hid behind a beech tree nearby, waiting. Dew dripped down the leaves onto my neck. My legs went numb from crouching. The sun climbed higher. Then I heard it, a sharp hawk cry from above, a dark-shaped dove from the sky, skimming the treetops. The oak erupted with panicked squeaking. A fat gray squirrel burst from the canopy, leaping wildly from branch to branch. It jumped too fast. Its front claws missed a branch, its body twisted in midair, and its head smacked hard against the trunk. It slid down and dropped into the grass at the base of the tree. Didn't move. The hawk circled once, screamed, and flew away. I counted to 20. Nothing. I waited a bit longer to make sure the hawk was gone, then walked over. The squirrel was curled up, still breathing. Just like the system said, if I'd come any later, it would have woken up and run off. I tied its legs with a leather cord, stuffed it deep in my basket, covered it with leaves and sticks, and headed home. When I got back, my father was sitting in the yard shaving arrow shafts. The arrowheads I'd sharpened yesterday were laid out beside him, along with a small jar of pine resin glue. I set down my basket and pulled the sticks away to show the squirrel. "Mother, I want to eat meat," I said. Her eyes lit up. She weighed the squirrel in her hand. "Nice and fat. I'll cook it tonight. Be careful with the skin," my father added. "Save it. We can make a hand warmer for winter." I sat down next to my father and started handing him arrowheads one by one. He'd split the tip of each shaft, press in the head, then wrap it tight with thin hemp cord. We worked together in silence, him carving, me passing. Then I spoke up. "Father, I'm weak. Not much strength. If all I ever do is work the fields, I won't last many years." I stared at the wood shavings on the ground. If it weren't for the medicine Big Brother got me, I'd be like the others, never waking up. I want to find another way. He was quiet for a while. Then he said, "Your brother is a night squire. When he comes home next time, I'll talk to him. He knows people. He can figure something out for you. Thank you." "Father, don't thank me." He waved his hand and picked up the next shaft. That evening, the house smelled like meat. Mother chopped the squirrel into small pieces, fried it in a bit of saved fat, threw in wild greens and dried mushrooms, and stewed it all in a clay pot. We ate it with hot black bread straight off the fire, the bran smell mixing with the rich broth. Over dinner, my father brought up finding me a path forward again. My mother's eyes went wet, and she kept nodding. She piled extra meat into my bowl and ate nothing but bread and vegetable broth herself. That night, I lay on my straw mat, staring at the stars through the hole in the roof, unable to sleep. When I woke at dawn, 3 new pieces of intelligence were already sitting in my mind. The first one hit me hard. My big brother would pass through our village this afternoon and stop home for about half an hour. He'd already heard about my condition from our father. After he goes back, he'll ask the castle steward for a favor, and the steward, impressed by my brother's hard work, will agree to take me on as a stable boy. The second was about the coast. Fishermen at the seaside village had found an unusual school of fish. The Baron would order a dock built and boats made to catch them. Big news for the territory, but not much use to me. I'd be shoveling horse dung, not hauling nets. The third piece told me that a kid named Gooden had 5 silver coins buried in a clay pot under his vegetable patch. 5 silver coins could feed a family for 2 or 3 months. But those coins weren't mine. Gooden's just a little kid, and if they went missing he'd cry his eyes out looking for them. Not worth the risk. Not for 5 silvers. I spent the morning helping my mother, chopping wood, carrying water, weeding the garden. In the afternoon, my father taught me how to shave arrow shafts. I practiced carefully, one after another, while glancing down the road every few minutes. At dusk, I heard hoofbeats. I jumped up and ran to the fence. My parents came out too, my mother grabbing the fence post and standing on her toes to see. A gray horse appeared at the end of the road. My brother rode in, dust trailing behind him. We all went inside. He could only stay half an hour. He was delivering a message to the village chief and stopped by on the way. He looked me over and asked about my injury. I thanked him for the healing potion. He waved it off. Then my father brought it up. This boy is weak. He nearly died. Can you find him something? Anything? At the castle? My brother thought for a moment, and his eyes lit up. Actually, the stable hand broke his ankle last month. Bad break. Probably can't do heavy work anymore. The castle needs someone to take care of the horses. Isn't that hard work? My father asked. Harder than nothing. Easier than farming, my brother said. They feed you, house you, give you 2 sets of rough clothes a year. And if you do well, you might learn a thing or 2. My father looked at me. I'll go, I said. My brother patted my shoulder. I'll talk to the steward. But no promises. He has the final say. I'm just a squire. Just mention it, my father said. If he agrees, it's a blessing. If not, it's fate. My brother gave me some advice. Work fast, talk politely, always look for things that need doing. Then got back on his horse and rode off into the fading light. I stood at the fence watching him disappear down the road. A stable boy. It's just jumping from one mud pit into another, really. But it was the first glimpse of change I'd seen since arriving in this world. I went inside and started packing. Pack what? Nothing's settled yet, my father said. I'm getting ready just in case. If the steward says yes, I don't want to keep anyone waiting. I woke at first light and checked the intelligence in my head. First piece. My brother Jolin went back to the castle last night and spoke to the steward. The answer was yes. He'd come for me this morning. Second piece. The chestnut horse in the stable was restless because of a hidden bloodline stirring inside it. If fed the right magical material, it could awaken and transform into a magical beast mount. But if nothing was done, the stirring would fade in 3 days and the bloodline would seal forever. Third piece. The evening hay delivery would contain 2 wild fruits mixed in. The ripe red one could slightly strengthen a person's body. The unripe green one could too. My heart was pounding. This was proof. The system wasn't weak, I was. Back in the village, I only crossed paths with chickens and neighbors, so the intelligence was small. Now that I was stepping into a bigger world, the opportunities were already growing. I jumped up, washed my face, and put on an old shirt my brother had outgrown. My mother looked surprised. My father laughed and said nothing was confirmed yet, but I told him I believed in my brother. Minutes later, hoofbeats. Jolin came riding in on his gray horse, sweating. He said the steward agreed but wanted to see me first, and we had to hurry. The Baron was heading to the coastal village after breakfast, and Jolin had to ride with him. Before I could think, I was sitting behind my brother on the horse, gripping his belt, wind roaring past my ears. The thatched house shrank behind us until it disappeared. Half an hour later, I saw the castle, gray stone walls on a low hill, wooden watchtowers on top. Rows of low buildings outside for servants and craftsmen. The whole thing was nearly 100 years old, built by the previous baron. The guards waved us through. Inside was a gravel courtyard, the baron's 2-story stone house straight ahead, barracks and a training yard to the left, stables and storerooms to the right. Jolin took me to the steward's office. A middle-aged man in a gray robe sat behind a desk, keys hanging from his belt. He looked me up and down like he was trying to see through me. He asked my age. 12. What work I'd done. Farming, chopping wood, digging herbs, shaving arrow shafts. Could I read? I said my brother taught me a few words. I could write my own name and count to 100. He asked about my health, whether I was obedient, whether I was hardworking. Then he said, the stable needs someone. Cut grass, mix feed, groom the horses, shovel manure, whatever else needs doing. Food and shelter provided, 2 sets of rough clothes a year, maybe a few coppers at year's end if you do well. Can you handle it? Yes, I said. Then stay. He waved us out. On the way out, a group came from the stone building. The man in front was about 30, a sword at his hip, sharp-looking. The Baron. Jolin pulled me aside, and we bowed. The Baron glanced at me for a second, then mounted his horse and rode off with his escorts. Jolin patted my shoulder and took me to the stables, a long row of low buildings, half covered, half open air. The covered side had stalls for horses. The open side had hay, water troughs, and workspace. He introduced me to old Tom, a skinny, stooped old man with white hair and a limp. Tom looked me over, nodded, and said, "Fine, he can stay." Jolin told me again to work hard, talk little, and keep my eyes open. Then he rushed off to catch up with the Baron. I rolled up my sleeves and got to work. Swept the floors, cleared out old straw from the empty stalls, scrubbed the water troughs, hauled fresh water from the well. Old Tom gave me a piece of hard black bread and cold water for lunch. It was sour and scratched my throat, but I ate it without complaint. Most of the stalls were empty. The Baron had taken the other horses. Only one was occupied, a chestnut mare, pawing at the ground, tossing her head, restless. That was the one from the intelligence, the bloodline awakening. I watched her for a while, and she turned to look back at me. We stared at each other. I felt the itch to do something about it, but I pushed it down. I was a brand new stable boy on my first day. I didn't even know where this horse came from. No sense sticking my nose where it didn't belong. Not yet, anyway. I'd wait for the evening hay delivery, and the 2 wild fruits hidden inside it. That evening, a rickety ox cart rolled up to the stable with a load of fresh-cut grass packed into big baskets. Old Tom told me to unload it all. I hauled basket after basket until my back was soaked with sweat and my arms burned. While I worked, I kept my hands busy inside each basket, feeling through the grass. In the second basket, my fingers touched something round and hard, completely different from the soft leaves. My heart jumped, but I kept my face calm. I nudged it to the corner of the basket and covered it with grass. A few handfuls later, I found a second one, smaller. I hid both fruits in a secret pocket I'd sewn into my sleeve the night before. Old Tom checked the stalls after I finished and seemed satisfied. We went to the kitchen to get dinner. A bowl of hot salty soup and 2 fist-sized loaves of black bread. That was a full day's food. Old Tom showed me my bed, a straw mat on the floor of the storage room next to the stable. He told me the nicer stone rooms across the yard were for upper servants and the steward. Someone like me might get there in 10 or 20 years if I was lucky. When things quieted down, I told Tom I needed to relieve myself and walked behind the stable to the manure pile. Once I was sure nobody was around, I pulled out the 2 fruits. One big, one small. The intelligence said the ripe red one would strengthen my body a little, and the unripe green one would do the same but less. I bit into the big one first. Sweet juice burst in my mouth, cool and fragrant. Warmth spread from my stomach into my arms, legs, and spine. Every muscle felt like it was soaking in warm water. When it passed, I clenched my fist, stronger. Not imagined. Real. Then I ate the small one. Sour, bitter, awful. I nearly spat it out, but forced it down. There was a faint warmth too, much weaker than the first. Then my stomach growled loudly, and I had a violent need to go. I barely made it in time. The smell was terrible. Even I couldn't stand it. I crept back to the storage room reeking. Old Tom wrinkled his nose, shifted away from me, grunted, and went back to sleep. I was too exhausted to care and passed out on my mat. Before dawn, Tom shook me awake. Time to water and feed the horses. I splashed cold water on my face and checked the new day's intelligence. First, Old Tom was testing me. If my behavior pleased him today, he'd move out of the storage room and hand me full responsibility for the horses, morning and evening. Second, my brother Jolin would visit this morning. If I asked him to teach me basic sword work, he'd agree. The Baron didn't forbid servants from improving themselves. Third, in the third stall, wedged between the feed trough and the wall, there was a gold coin. It had gotten stuck in a horse's hoof during some past battle and later fell loose into the crack. I kept my face blank, took the water buckets from Tom, filled them at the spring in the back garden, and started the morning routine. A little water for each horse first, then dry feed mixed from oats, barley, and bean cake. Tom watched me from the doorway. "Not bad," he said. "Breakfast soon." While I worked, I felt someone watching me. I glanced up. On the second-floor balcony of the stone house, the Baron stood looking down at the yard. I dropped my eyes immediately and kept working, pretending I hadn't noticed a thing. The next morning, my brother Jolin came by the stable to check on me. I asked him to teach me some basic combat skills, even just enough to make my body stronger. He smiled and said he'd do it. The Baron didn't mind servants trying to improve themselves. Jolin told me he'd come back in a few days to start with stances and footwork, and once my body toughened up, he'd move on to basic swordplay. He also told me where his room was in case I ever needed him. All day I kept my eye on the third stall, where the gold coin was hidden in the crack between the feed trough and the wall. But there were always guards on the walls or people at the windows of the stone house. The angle was wrong. Anyone looking could see right into that stall. I couldn't risk it. That evening, old Tom dropped a surprise. He told me he'd bought a female slave last September, a hard-working woman in her 30s, and the Baron had given him a small house outside the castle walls. From now on, he'd sleep there at night. The stable was mine to manage alone after dark. He warned me to keep a close watch on the chestnut horse. Its restlessness was getting worse. I waited until deep night. Every lamp in the stone house went dark. The patrol footsteps grew rare. Then I crept into the third stall, reached into the narrow gap beside the feed trough, and felt around, grass bits, stray oats, until my fingertips touched something hard, round, and flat. A gold coin, bigger than a copper, heavier than a silver. It glowed even in the dark. My hands were shaking. One gold coin could feed my family for years. I slipped it into my hidden sleeve pocket and went back to bed. I lay there turning it over in my fingers for a long time before I finally hid it away and slept. The next morning's intelligence told me three things. First, the fishermen at the coastal village had brought in a huge catch. The Baron was pleased, and tonight every servant would get a roasted fish. If I went to the kitchen to help clean the fish, I might be able to collect scales and bones that could turn out to be valuable. Second, in 30 days, a merchant caravan would pass through the Baron's territory. One of the traders would have a book called Tales of Curiosities, with something special hidden inside it. Third, there were still copper coins stuck in cracks around the stable. Old Tom's bad legs had kept him from cleaning properly. If I searched carefully, I'd find them all. I spent the morning scrubbing every corner of the stable and dug out over a dozen copper coins from the cracks. In the afternoon, soldiers came back from the coast with cart after cart of sea fish. The whole inner yard turned into chaos, servants running everywhere, unloading crates, the stink of fish filling the air. After I finished tending the horses, I went to the kitchen and offered to help. A cook put me to work scooping fish scales and guts into buckets. While I worked, I overheard servants talking. Along with the regular fish, the soldiers had also caught several fish that had reached magical rank. Those ones were huge, with golden scales that shimmered. The steward had personally watched them carried inside, a gift for the Baron. That's when I understood. Regular fish scales were worthless, but scales and bones from ranked magical creatures contained elemental power. They could be used to make weapons, armor, or medicine. The problem was, those golden-scaled fish were already locked away under the steward's watch. I was just a stable boy. How was I supposed to get my hands on any of that? While I was scooping fish scales into the bucket, I spotted something. A single golden scale mixed in among the silver-blue ones on a large fish the cook was cleaning. My heart nearly stopped. I kept working like nothing had happened, slowly shifting closer. When the cook's blade scraped that golden scale off with all the others, I palmed it against my fingernail and flicked it into my hidden sleeve pocket in one smooth motion. Right after, the steward came in and called the cook to the back kitchen. I could hear bits of what he said. The ranked fish had to be processed carefully, every scale and bone ground into powder, nothing wasted. That powder was meant for someone important. The Baron's children, maybe, or his knights. That one golden scale in my sleeve was probably the only piece I'd ever get my hands on. I filled the bucket and hauled it out. Old Tom showed up late, and I teased him about it. He grumbled and told me to mind my own business. We sat on the storage room doorstep that night eating roasted fish, one per servant, the Baron's reward for the big catch. Tom chewed his down to nothing, bones and all, then headed home to his woman outside the walls. Sitting there alone, chewing fish in the dark, I thought about this world. Everything in the territory belonged to the nobles. Life, death, none of it was really ours. The only way to change that was to become extraordinary. The next morning, my brother came by early with a group of men. The Baron was sending everyone to the coastal village to catch as many fish as possible. The steward had ordered Old Tom to go too, to look after the horses there. Jolan wouldn't have time to teach me sword work for 10 days or more, but he'd thought ahead. He introduced me to William, a fellow squire who was better with a blade than him. William looked me over, asked if I could handle the pain of training, and said he'd start teaching me basics when he got back from the coast at midday. After they all rode off, I sat down and checked my intelligence. Something was different. 4 pieces instead of the usual 3. First, the fish would keep coming for 3 more days, then scatter. The Baron planned to trade the catch with a merchant caravan in a month. If things went well, he'd get a single-mast sailing ship by year's end. Second, this afternoon at 3, a gray-robed adventurer carrying a broadsword would get into a fight at the Drunk Cat Tavern in town, then walk away. Third, the chestnut horse's bloodline stirring had ended last night. The trace of magical beast blood inside it had failed to awaken. It would spend its whole life as an ordinary war horse. I felt a pang about that. I'd known it was happening and done nothing, but I'd had no way to help. I didn't even know what kind of material the horse needed. Fourth, Old Tom would spend the whole day in the coastal wind. He was old and frail. Tonight he'd develop a high fever, and without treatment, it could kill him. 4 pieces of intelligence. That had never happened before. I didn't know if the system had upgraded or what, but I couldn't think about that now. Old Tom was going to get dangerously sick tonight. But how could I warn him? Tell him I can see the future? Tell him he'll get a fever? Nobody would believe that. I decided to let the thing with Old Tom go. I was 12 years old. I couldn't explain knowing the future without being called a freak. I went back to sweeping the stable. At midday, a column of carts rolled and loaded with barrels and crates from the coast. I rushed out to take the horses, leading them one by one into their stalls. When things settled, I found William and asked if he could teach me now. He grinned and took me to the training ground, a sandy yard with wooden practice dummies and a rack of training swords. He handed me a wooden blade. It was heavier than I expected. He showed me the basics: starting stance, slash, thrust, upward cut, sweep, block. Every move, he corrected me over and over. My feet shifted when they shouldn't. My wrist was too stiff. My swing was too slow. But I learned fast. My body was weak, but I had an adult mind underneath. I understood every instruction and remembered every detail. After half an hour, I could run through the whole sequence start to finish. Rough and underpowered, but recognizable. William told me about the knight ranks: black iron, bronze, silver, gold, earth, sky. The Baron was a black iron knight, the only real knight in the entire territory. To become one, you had to condense a battle or a seed inside your body. William said 100 of me wouldn't be enough for the Baron to break a sweat, and even William himself could be killed with a single casual strike. After William left for the coast, I practiced alone. 3 rounds and I collapsed. My arms shook, my legs gave out. 2 pieces of black bread a day, that was all the fuel I had. Without better food, I'd never build the strength to improve. That evening, the hay delivery was only 4 baskets instead of the usual load. The pasture was running low. I asked the driver where it was, about 3 miles north of the castle. I filed that away. When the Baron's men returned that night, Old Tom wasn't among them. The next morning, my brother banged on my door before dawn. He was heading out again. I told him the chestnut horse had calmed down and could probably be ridden now. His eyes lit up. He said he'd report that to the Baron as a small credit for me. After they rode off, I checked the day's intelligence. First, William would come back at noon with news that Old Tom had a high fever. The Baron would decide not to send any more stable hands to the coast and would plan to buy 2 slave grooms from the merchant caravan when it arrived. Second, on the Baron's pasture in the hills, there were 6 stalks of a plant called body-tempering grass, hidden among ordinary grass. If I got permission from the steward and went there myself, I could find them. Eating them would strengthen my body and build a real foundation. Third, this afternoon, the Baron's young daughter would be reading a biography in the back garden and leave it by the pool. Tucked inside that book was a copy of the basic battle aura condensation method. If I grabbed it before dawn tomorrow while fetching water, I could take it. After sunrise, the girl would come looking for the book. My heart nearly burst out of my chest. The battle aura condensation method, the key to stepping into the extraordinary, the way to form a battle aura seed. And the body tempering grass, exactly what my broken-down body needed to handle real training. 2 paths to changing my fate, both within reach. I forced myself to breathe. Tomorrow before dawn, I'd get the condensation method first. At noon, William came back and walked into the stone house. Half an hour later, he came to find me. "Alan, old Tom. He's not doing well. High fever last night. They found him this morning, still burning up." "It might be bad. I understand," I said. He patted my shoulder and left without another word. I woke before dawn with my heart already racing. The intelligence told me 3 things. The book's cover was a separate sleeve that could be slipped off easily, revealing the battle aura method tucked inside, without damaging anything. The body tempering grass worked best cooked with herbs into a soup, 1 stalk at a time. Eaten raw, the effect was cut in half. And the 6 stalks were in 2 spots, 3 by a rock pile in the northwest corner of the pasture, 3 near willow roots by the stream. I'd know them by their saw-toothed leaves, fine fuzz on the underside, and reddish roots. My brother banged on the door before I could even get up. I helped the men saddle their horses, and they rode off into the morning fog. The moment they were gone, I grabbed my bucket and walked to the back garden. The pool was quiet, leaves floating on the surface. I circled it twice and saw nothing. My stomach dropped. Then I checked the gaps between the stones around the edge, and there it was, a book wedged between 2 rocks, damp with dew. I slid the cover sleeve off. Between the inner pages and the cover, a folded piece of sheepskin parchment. I pulled it out, slipped it into my hidden pocket, fitted the cover back on, flicked a few water drops onto the surface to make it look untouched, and pushed the book back into the crack. Back in the storage room with the door shut, my hands were shaking. I unfolded the parchment. It was covered in tiny writing and diagrams, outlines of the human body, energy channels, the location of the dantian. Arrows showed how battle aura flows. The method had 4 steps. First, strengthen the body. Strong body means strong blood and energy. Second, guide the energy flow along the channels. Third, spin that flow into the dantian until it forms a vortex. Fourth, compress the vortex into a battle aura seed. Foundation first. 1 step at a time. I folded the parchment, hid it with my coins, and got to work on the next problem, the body tempering grass. I needed to reach the pasture, so I went to the steward's office and told him the hay deliveries had been short 2 days running. I offered to walk out to the pasture myself and bring back some grass. He laughed and said I probably just wanted fresh air, but he waved me through. I walked out of the castle, through the small town at the foot of the hill, Poplar Town, with its blacksmith, tailor, and tavern, and kept going northwest for about 2 hours until the grassland opened up before me. Rolling green slopes, a stream cutting through the middle, empty and quiet. I found the rock pile first. Crouched down, sifted through the grass clump by clump, and there they were. 3 stalks with saw-toothed leaves, fuzzy undersides, reddish roots, slightly warm to the touch. I pulled them out carefully and tucked them in my basket. Then I followed the stream to the willow trees and found the other 3. I filled the rest of the basket with ordinary grass so nobody would ask questions, and headed back. Made it through the gate just before dark. That night, alone in the storage room, I laid out the 6 stalks. I had no pot, no fire, no herbs to cook them with. Raw meant half the effect, but half was better than nothing. I bit into the first one. Bitter, so bitter it nearly made me gag, with a strange fishy smell underneath. I chewed and swallowed. Then heat erupted from my stomach and spread through my whole body. It turned from warm to burning. Every muscle stung like it was being stabbed with needles and scorched with fire. I clenched my jaw to keep from screaming. The heat surged up my spine and hit the top of my skull. My vision went white. Then it faded. I made a fist. Power. Real, solid power. I stood up and ran through the sword forms right there in the cramped room. Slash, thrust, upward cut, sweep, block. Every move was stronger and smoother than before. No shaking arms, no trembling legs. I finished the whole sequence without even breathing hard. I ate all 6 stalks, one after another. By the end, I was drenched in sweat, but my body felt completely remade. I lay on my straw bed, staring at the dark ceiling, smiling. The next morning's intelligence brought no opportunities for me. The fish were gone, the catch had dried up almost overnight, and the Baron had to call off the operation. His eldest son Andre had decided to grind the magical fish bones and scales into powder and mix it into the guards' meals to strengthen them. And the third piece, the ranked magical boar, the one that killed my friends, the one that nearly killed me. It hadn't left the area. It was lurking in the hills north of my home village, and it was the kind of beast that held grudges. It was coming back. I couldn't tell anyone about the boar, a 12-year-old stable boy who somehow knows where a magical beast is lurking. I'd be treated like a freak, or worse. I muttered something rude about the Baron not being able to handle one wild pig, then immediately regretted it. In a castle, walls have ears. A servant who badmouths his lord doesn't live long. The next several days were quiet and repetitive. Wake up, feed horses, clean stalls, practice sword forms behind the manure pile where nobody goes. The body tempering grass had changed my body completely. I was more than twice as strong as when I arrived. My sword swings cut the air with a whistling sound now. Then one morning, the intelligence finally brought something big. First, the boar had killed over a dozen more people, including 2 from my home village. The Baron realized he couldn't take it alone. He'd invited the Black Mountain Baron and the Valley Baron to join a combined hunt. Both would arrive this afternoon with their men. Tomorrow morning, 3 barons would ride out together. Second, the visiting baron's servants would set up stalls in the town square tomorrow afternoon, selling goods from their territories. Third, near evening tomorrow, an adventurer would wander into town. When he heard about the market, he'd lay out some things he'd picked up on his travels. Among them, a toe bone from a 6th-rank sea dragon with a magic pearl stuck inside. The adventurer wouldn't know what it really was and would sell it cheap. A 6th-rank sea dragon was on the level of a sky knight, impossibly far above the baron's black iron rank. Whatever that magic pearl was, it had to be something extraordinary. I didn't know its use yet, but the system had singled it out for a reason. Tomorrow's intelligence would probably explain more. My brother and William showed up in full gear. The Baron had sent them to deliver invitations, Jolin to Black Mountain territory, William to the valley. Before leaving, Jolin told me to prepare extra feed. With 2 visiting barons and all their horses, the stable would be packed. That gave me a sudden worry. Would they take over my storage room for an extra stall? And where was I hiding my valuables? I looked around the cramped room. The gold coin, the copper coins, the golden fish scale, the battle aura parchment. I couldn't keep them jingling in my sleeve pocket with all these new people around. I found a loose stone at the base of the wall, wrapped everything in a scrap of cloth, stuffed it into the hole, and fit the stone back in place. Invisible. That evening, 2 columns of riders poured through the castle gate. The Black Mountain Baron on a black war horse, the Valley Baron on a chestnut. Both wore swords and carried themselves like men used to being obeyed. Behind them rode 4 young squires and several servants leading pack horses. I ran out, took all the reins, and led every horse to its stall. The stable was full for the first time, over a dozen horses snorting, pawing, calling to each other. I lay down on my straw bed that night, listening to the noise. Hope nothing goes wrong tonight, I whispered. I fell asleep thinking about tomorrow and woke before dawn. Before I could even check my intelligence, I heard footsteps. 2 servants from the Black Mountain Barons group showed up at the stable, a tall one and a short, fat one. The tall one started ordering me around, telling me to hurry up and get the horses ready before the nobles woke. He stood there watching me work without lifting a finger. While I ran to the garden to fetch water, I caught a piece of their conversation behind me. The tall one was laughing about how I slept in the storage room with no way to cook or keep warm, saying I probably wouldn't survive the winter. Then the short one slapped his back and told him to shut up. He'd been talking about stealing food from the nobles, and that kind of talk could get them killed. I came back with the water and watched them leave, arm in arm. Stealing from nobles? These 2 were either brave or stupid. After feeding all the horses, I checked the day's intelligence. First, the adventurer would set up his stall at the southeast corner of the town square this evening. The sea dragon toe bone would be at the edge of his display, grayish-white, with the hole plugged by dried blood. He'd sell it for just 1 silver coin. Second, among the Black Mountain territories or for sale, there was a piece that looked like ordinary iron but hid a core of star-pattern iron inside. That metal could improve how weapons channel battle aura. 6 pounds total, 50 coppers per pound, 3 silver coins for the whole thing. Third, the Valley Territory was selling creek turtles, and one of them had been living in a magic-rich environment long enough for its bloodline to start evolving. It had been captured before the change finished, so it looked sickly. Price, 2 silver coins. 6 silver coins total for all 3. I had a gold coin worth 100 silvers, more than enough. But a stable boy pulling out a gold coin at a market would raise every eyebrow in town. My plan was to find the adventurer first, by the dragon bone, and exchange the gold coin into silvers at the same time. An outsider wouldn't ask questions. After that, I could shop freely without drawing attention. At dawn, the 3 barons rode out in full armor with their squires and men. The castle went quiet. A couple hours later, the noise came back. Cheering, hoofbeats, shouting. I ran to the stable door and saw them riding in. The Black Pine Baron led the way, laughing with the other 2. Behind them, servants carried a massive dead beast on wooden poles. The boar, the one that killed my friends, the one that nearly killed me. Everyone in the castle poured out to cheer. I stared at the carcass and felt something tight in my chest loosen just a little. Finally dead, I whispered. Good. After the excitement died down, I went back to work receiving horses. Then one of the visiting servants, a rude one, walked right past me into the stable, found a stall, tied up his horse, and went straight for my storage room. He grabbed the bag of fine grain the steward had sent for today's hunt horses. I blocked the doorway. Put it back, he sneered. A little grain. You don't say anything. I don't say anything. Who'll know? I told him the grain belonged to the Black Pine Territory, not to him. He tried to talk his way around it, saying his baron and my baron were friends. So what did a little feed matter? I didn't move. My brother is Jolan Chinching, I said. Knight Squire. Think carefully. His face changed. He stared at me for a long moment, then dropped the grain bag on the floor and walked out. At the door he turned back and said coldly that all the horses had better get fine grain tonight. The barons hunted hard, and so did their mounts. If I neglected any of them, I'd pay for it. I watched him leave, then bent down, picked up the bag, and put it back in the corner. As the sun started going down, I made my move. I pulled the gold coin and my 13 coppers from the hiding spot under the loose stone, left the parchment and golden scale behind, and headed for the castle gate. The guards knew me by now. They waved me through and told me to hurry back for dinner. The baron was in a good mood after the hunt and had ordered bone soup for everyone. First stop was the tailor's shop. I needed a coin purse. I couldn't keep reaching into my sleeve pocket in public. I bought a rabbit skin pouch with a drawstring for 10 coppers, mentioning my brother Jolan's name to get the price down from 15. The town square was packed. A dozen stalls, people shouting prices, buyers haggling. I drifted through the crowd, pretending to browse, watching for the adventurer. I saw the local blacksmith haggle with the Black Mountain or seller. He talked the price down from 60 coppers per pound to 45 and ordered 200 pounds. I filed that away. Then a figure in a dusty gray cloak turned the corner, walked to the southeast edge of the square, crouched down, and spread out his goods on the ground. The adventurer. I wandered over and squatted down to look. Daggers, leather pouches, odd stones, and a pile of bones. I played dumb, asking what they were. He said they were magical beast bones, full of essence. He looked at my patched clothes and laughed, saying I probably couldn't afford a single copper. I told him I was shopping for my brother, a knight squire. That changed his tone. I searched through his bone pile, but couldn't find what the intelligence described. Then I noticed something leaning against his pack. A bone staff over 2 meters long, thick as a bowl at one end, gray-white, with dried blood crusted over a hole at the top. A 6th rank sea dragon's toe bone. Of course it would be huge. I picked it up, 20 or 30 pounds at least. This one, I said. 1 silver, he nodded. No bargaining. Then I spotted a dagger on his blanket. Horn handle, razor-sharp blade with a blood groove. I tested the edge, and it cut my fingertip with barely a touch. I'll take this too. How much? 10 silver. I pulled the gold coin from my sleeve and handed it over. Give me change. He stared at me, then at the coin, then at the patrolling guards nearby. He swallowed, counted out 89 silver coins, and passed them over. I counted every one, loaded them into my new purse, tucked the dagger in my belt, and hoisted the bone staff onto my shoulder. People stared as I walked through the crowd carrying a giant bone. I didn't care. Next I found the Valley Territory's turtle stall. One turtle looked half dead, shell dull, barely moving. Another buyer was arguing with the seller, saying it looked like it was about to die and wasn't worth 2 silvers. "I'll take it," I said, and handed over the coins before anyone could blink. The seller tied it up with rope, and I hung it from the bone staff. The other buyer called me an idiot behind my back. Fine by me. Last stop, the Black Mountain or stall. The seller recognized me from earlier and started his pitch. I dug through his pile of iron ore, feeling each piece, until my fingers found one with fine, unusual patterns on the surface. The star pattern iron. I picked it up along with a regular piece of similar size. "These two," I said. "One for me, one for my brother. We'll each have a sword made." He weighed them. 6 pounds each, 12 total, 50 coppers a pound. 6 silver coins. I paid, and he lent me a basket to carry them. I walked back toward the castle with a dragon bone on my shoulder, a sick turtle dangling from it, a dagger at my hip, 2 chunks of ore in a basket on my back, and 81 silver coins in my purse. Not bad for an evening shopping. I hauled my loot back to the castle, bone staff sticking out of the basket, turtle dangling from it, or weighing me down. The guards laughed when they saw me. I told them the ore was for making swords for me and my brother, and the turtle was because I was tired of living on 2 pieces of black bread a day. They let me through and reminded me about the bone soup the Baron was giving out tonight. At the stable, a kitchen helper named Pierre ran up to me, whispering excitedly that my brother had left 3 roasted fish in my room. He stood there with big, hopeful eyes, waiting for me to share. I thanked him and walked right past. He muttered, "This dumb kid," behind my back, but I understood now. He'd seen the fish, seen my new coin purse, and his mind was already working. Inside the storage room, I noticed immediately that my straw mat had been disturbed. I'd pressed the corners flat before leaving, and now they were rumpled. Someone had searched my room. I forced myself not to check the loose stone right away. Instead, I set everything down, grabbed my bowl, and went to get dinner. Pierre was still lurking outside, watching. When he realized I wasn't sharing any fish, he walked off without a word. That night, I tried to get the magic pearl out of the dragon bone. I scraped at the dried blood, plugging the hole with my fingers, then with my new dagger. Nothing, not even a scratch. The bone was impossibly hard. The next morning, the visiting barons and their people rode out early. The castle emptied. I caught the steward on his way across the yard and told him I'd saved most of the fine grain he'd sent. The visiting horses hadn't needed much. He smiled and said I'd done well, but told me to bring it back. If everyone started shorting the horses to pocket grain, it would cause problems. Then I checked my intelligence, and my stomach dropped. First, Pierre had reported me to the steward last night, claiming I was skimming horse feed for myself. The steward didn't fully believe it, but planned to call my brother in for a talk, partly as a lesson, partly to deepen Jolin's loyalty by showing noble mercy. Second, the Baron's eldest son Andre had been hearing people say the stable boy was too young to work alone without supervision. He'd suggest to the Baron today that I be sent to the hill pasture instead. The Baron's daughter Alina had also been pushing to expand the pasture and move some good horses there. The Baron would decide the castle needed an experienced groom, and I'd be reassigned to the pasture. Third, the creek turtle's evolution had failed after being taken from its magic-rich habitat, but its blood still held some essence. If I drank it raw and trained hard, I could reach the initial stage of apprentice night today. I didn't waste a second. I went into the storage room, closed the door, and picked up the turtle. It was barely alive, twitching faintly. I felt bad. This creature had been on the edge of becoming something extraordinary, just like me. But I needed what it had. I drove my dagger through its head. It shuddered and went still. I flipped it over and let the blood drain into my wooden bowl, just a shallow layer at the bottom. I stared at it for a moment, then tipped the bowl back and drank it all. The taste was bloody and sweet and awful. Heat flooded out from my stomach, washing through every muscle. I grabbed the bone staff, ran to the empty space behind the stable, and started drilling sword forms. Slash, thrust, upward cut, sweep, block. Again, again, again. The warmth kept flowing, sinking deeper into my body with every repetition. I could feel myself getting stronger, faster, more coordinated with each pass. The sun climbed higher, my clothes soaked through with sweat, my arms screaming, but I wouldn't stop. The intelligence said I could break through today, so I kept going. I don't know how many rounds I did, but at some point, the bone staff suddenly felt lighter in my hands. I stopped, gasping, and clenched my fist. Power. Real, undeniable power. I swung the staff, and it whistled through the air. Apprentice night, initial stage. I'd done it. Then my brother knocked. He walked in, saw the dead turtle and the blood in my bowl, looked at my mouth. I hadn't wiped it. He sighed and told me I shouldn't eat things raw. He'd take the turtle to the kitchen and have it stewed for me. He glanced at the or in the corner. I'd bought 2 pieces, one for each of us. He shook his head. He already had a sword issued by the Baron. He told me to keep both pieces for myself. Then his expression changed. You probably can't stay here as stable boy much longer, he said quietly. With old Tom gone, there's no one to supervise you. People have been talking. Am I going back to the village? No. You're my brother. Nobody's sending you back. The word is they'll move you to the hill pasture. It's easier work, just watching horses. Probably after the merchant caravan arrives. I nodded. Wherever the Baron sends me, I'm grateful. He looked at me for a long moment, then smiled. You've got a good head. I'll see you later. Don't forget to pick up the turtle soup tonight. I watched my brother walk away and counted the days in my head. The merchant caravan was still about 2 weeks out. I had time to prepare. 4 days I trained behind the stable with the bone staff, running through the basic sword forms over and over. Since reaching apprentice night, the routine felt easy, no gasping, no shaking. But the magic pearl stuck inside the dragon bone wouldn't budge, and the daily intelligence never mentioned how to get it out. Whatever the trigger was, it hadn't come yet. Then one morning, the intelligence finally gave me something useful. First, the Baron's eldest son Andre had gone to Northwind City and bought a young hawk with the potential to become a second-rank magical beast. He treasured it, but it was fragile and needed careful raising. If I took on that job and anything went wrong, Andre would punish me harshly. Not worth the risk. Second, the town blacksmith Horg had finally mastered the craft of forging night-long swords. He'd completed his first one yesterday. If I brought him the star pattern iron or now and asked him to add cloud copper powder during forging, he could make a real battle or a conducting longsword. Horg was honest and trustworthy. Third, the old stable hand Carl, the one who'd broken his ankle, was coming back to the castle this afternoon. He was a good man, but couldn't handle heavy work anymore. I finished my morning chores and loaded both or pieces into a basket. The guards waved me through with a laugh. I headed straight for the blacksmith shop. Horg was inside, swinging his brand-new long sword through the air, clearly proud of himself. When I walked in and asked him to forge me a knight's long sword, he looked me up and down and laughed. You're that kid, Jolin's brother, the one who walked through town carrying a giant bone and a sick turtle. The whole town's been talking about you. I told him my requirements. Use both or pieces and add cloud copper powder during forging. He looked puzzled about why I cared which or he used, but didn't argue. I also asked him to include a scabbard and handle wrapping. 10 silver coins. 3 up front as deposit. I pulled out 12 and paid in full. His eyes lit up. 7 days, he said. Can't rush a proper sword. Then I asked if he could make a helmet. What do you need a helmet for? You're not going to war. Actually, I want something helmet-sized that I can cook in, like a small iron pot. He stared at me, then burst out laughing. You're going to cook in a helmet? 7 silver coins, he said, still chuckling. Pick it up with the sword in a week. I paid and walked out. 19 silver coins spent, but I felt better with the money turned into something useful. Cash in a stable boy's pocket was just trouble waiting to happen. That afternoon, Carl showed up, a quiet, gentle-looking man with a limp, carrying a worn bundle on his back. He walked into the stable, looked around, and seemed relieved everything was in order. Old Tom's apprentice, he asked. Something like that. He sat down on the straw mat and sighed. He said he'd slept in this same storage room when he first started. His leg was still bad, but stable work wasn't too heavy. He could manage if he took it slow. With Carl now sharing the storage room, I felt cramped and uneasy. I kept training behind the stable every day, but having someone around made everything harder. Then one morning, 4 pieces of intelligence came in, and they changed everything. A small wooden crate had been smashed by waves near the coastal village days ago. Something inside it had been activated by the seawater and was sending out traces of magical energy. That energy attracted a first-rank magical fish called a silverfin bream. At noon today, the fish would get stuck on the rocks south of the coastal village. If I went there carrying the sea dragon toe bone, I could easily kill it. Inside its head would be a magic core. Inside its belly would be something called a shark pearl. But the flesh was cursed and poisonous, not safe to eat. The second piece explained the shark pearl. It contained the blueprint for a soul weapon refinement array. With the right materials, I could forge a life-bound soul weapon, something that grows with its master. A treasure any extraordinary person would kill for. The third piece was a warning. The pearl originally held the remnant soul of an ancient alchemist who'd sealed himself inside at the moment of death, waiting to take over someone else's body. The silver-fin bream had swallowed the pearl and been possessed, but the alchemist's mind couldn't adapt to the fish body. That's why it would end up stranded and confused. Killing the fish would destroy the remnant soul too. The dying soul had cursed the fish's flesh. Anyone who ate it would suffer terrible luck. Fourth, my brother Jolan was being sent to the coastal village today to check if the fish schools had returned. If I found him before breakfast, I could ride along. I dropped everything and ran. Found Jolan's room, banged on the door, and asked to come with him. He looked surprised, but said yes. I grabbed my dagger and the bone staff, and we rode west on his gray horse. Carl stared at us from the stable door, mouth hanging open. He thought I was crazy, and now he saw I was Jolan's brother. We reached the coast around noon. Jolan went to check the boats and scatter bait to see if fish would come. He gave me a bread roll and told me to go play on the beach. I headed south along the shore, scanning the rocks. Then I saw it, a flash of silver, thrashing in a gap between the boulders. A massive fish, over 2 meters long, scales shimmering, half out of the water, flopping weakly. I gripped the bone staff, climbed onto the rocks above it, aimed at its head, and swung down hard. One hit. It thrashed wildly, spraying water everywhere. 2, 3, 4, 5. It stopped moving. I jumped down, pulled out my dagger, and cut into the shattered head. I dug around until I found the magic core, a small hard sphere. Rinsed it in the sea and stuffed it in my shirt. Then I slit the belly open and found a pouch-like organ. Inside it, round and smooth, the sharp pearl. I washed both treasures, pocketed them, cleaned my blade in the waves, and walked back. By the time I reached the village, I was soaking wet. Jolan looked me over and asked what happened. I grinned and showed him a handful of seashells I'd picked up along the way. Found some nice shells. Saw a big fish too, but it got away. He shook his head. Nothing here either. The fish schools haven't come back. Let's go home. I climbed up behind him on the horse, the bone staff across my lap, the magic core and the sharp pearl warm against my chest. That night, I fell asleep thinking about the pasture, and Carl shook me awake in the dark. He'd spotted a merchant caravan arriving at the castle the evening before. I checked my intelligence immediately. First, the caravan had arrived last night. The Baron hosted the caravan leader at dinner and ordered the steward to buy several servants, a good breeding mare, and to send someone to build a new stable at the hill pasture. The steward would summon me this morning to give me the assignment. Second, my longsword and helmet pot were finished. I could pick them up from Horde today. Third, the caravan had a used book stall. Among the old travel journals and curiosity books, there were 3 copies of Tales of Curiosities. The oldest, most worn copy had a golden slip of paper hidden in the cracked spine, a night combat technique called Wind-Breaking Slash, a speed-based sword skill, fast to learn and rare. After feeding the horses, a servant came running to drag me to the steward's office. The steward was all smiles. He told me the Baron had noticed my hard work this past month. Diligent, honest, no trouble. My family's loyalty was proven, and my brother Jolan was doing well as a squire. Now they were giving me a chance. The hill pasture was being expanded. The Baron planned to buy a quality mare from the caravan and needed someone trustworthy out there to manage things. Was I willing? I said yes before he finished asking. He handed me a letter for the town carpenter, old Bob. I was to take the carpenters to the pasture and build a new stable. Horses would be sent later. Back at the stable, I didn't waste a second. I pried the loose stone from the wall, grabbed the battle aura parchment and the golden fish scale, stuffed everything into my coin purse. I rolled up my straw mat, packed it in a basket, slung the bone staff over my shoulder, and headed for the door. Carl watched me with his mouth hanging open. See you around, old Carl. I waved and walked out. First stop, the blacksmith. I banged on Horg's door until he stumbled out, half-dressed and grumpy. He handed me the sword and the iron pot. I drew the blade. It was beautiful, balanced, sharp, gleaming faintly in the morning light. The handle was wrapped in leather cord, the scabbard fitted with copper bands. I swung it a few times, and it cut the air with a clean whistle. Horg was proud. He said the ore I'd brought had been unusually good to work with, much better than normal iron. He didn't know about the star pattern iron hidden inside, and I wasn't about to tell him. I also bought an axe and a chopping knife. Horg asked why I didn't just borrow tools from the steward. I told him I'd rather own my own. No questions, no explanations, use them whenever I want. He shrugged, charged me 23 silver coins for both, and sent me on my way. Then I headed to the market square. The caravan had set up dozens of stalls, and the place was packed. I found a skinny old man squatting in a corner behind a cloth spread with old books. I flipped through them one by one until I found the 3 copies of Tales of Curiosities. 2 were in decent shape. The third was falling apart, cover peeling, spine cracked open. That was the one. How much for this? I asked, holding up the beaten copy. 5 coppers. I paid and stuffed it in my basket without another word. With a sword on my hip and a basket full of supplies on my back, I headed out to handle everything before leaving for the pasture. First problem, food. The steward gave me a job, but no provisions. I stopped at a grain stall and bought 20 pounds of mixed grain for 1 silver coin. Then I grabbed flint stones for making fire and a wooden bowl to replace the one I'd left behind at the castle. While I was shopping, a guard came running through the crowd looking for me. He was carrying a bundle from the steward, a clay cooking pot, and 8 long sticks of hard black bread, a month's supply. He said someone would bring more each month. Then he noticed the long sword and stared. Where'd you get that? You didn't steal your brother's, did you? Had it made myself. Blacksmith Horg forged it. He laughed. Good for you, kid. Keep practicing. Maybe you'll be a squire like your brother someday. Next, I went to find the carpenter, old Bob. His wife answered the door and nearly fainted when she saw the sword. I showed them the steward's letter. Bob's eldest son, Baugia, asked smart questions. How big was the project? Would they need extra hands? When Bob got home, I laid it out plainly. I needed 2 stalls and a small cabin built today. I was sleeping there tonight. Within 2 weeks, 10 more stalls and a hay storage barn. He started sputtering about not having enough materials or workers. I rested my hand on the sword hilt and drew the blade an inch. The steel sang. Bob stopped arguing. Can do. Absolutely can do. His whole family scattered in every direction, fetching workers, borrowing ox carts, gathering timber and thatch. An hour later, he was back with 7 or 8 men, 2 loaded carts, and enough wood to start building. I stood up, shouldered my basket, picked up my sword, and pointed it down the road. Let's go. The carpenters drove their carts behind me as we headed north out of town toward the hill pasture. I had a sword, an axe, a chopping knife, a helmet-shaped iron pot, a clay cooking pot, grain, bread, flint, a book with a hidden sword technique inside it, a magic core, a sharp pearl, a golden fish scale, a battle aura parchment, a bone staff made from a sea dragon's toe, and 60-some silver coins in my purse. I was 12 years old, an apprentice knight, and I was walking toward a patch of grass in the middle of nowhere to take care of horses that hadn't arrived yet. But for the first time since coming to this world, the ground under my feet felt like mine. We reached the pasture around noon. John, the man who looked after the grass and delivered hay to the castle, came running over. He saw my long sword, and his attitude changed fast. I asked him where to build the stables. He pointed to his own spot near the road. I shot that down immediately. It was flat and open with nothing to block the wind. Winter was coming in 3 months. If the Baron's horses froze because of a bad location, we'd all pay for it. Old Bob the carpenter spotted a better place. A gentle slope backed by a hill that would shield against the northeast wind, with a stream running in front. I agreed. But when they started digging, they hit rock. Solid stone under the surface, sparking against their shovels. John stood to the side looking smug, saying he'd told us his spot was better. I grabbed a shovel and jumped into the pit. Every swing shattered the rock like it was dried clay. The carpenters stared at me, mouths open, backing away. I cleared out all the foundation holes in half an hour. After that, nobody questioned me or moved slowly. They worked hard and fast. By sunset, 2 open-sided horse shelters and 1 small wooden cabin were standing. The cabin had walls, a door, a window, and a thick thatched roof. Full of gaps, but it was mine. I sent the carpenters home and told them to come back tomorrow to keep building. More stalls first, then a storage barn. That night, I ate black bread, drank stream water, and lay on my straw mat in my own cabin for the first time. No one snoring next to me, no one watching, no one to answer to. Just wind and grass and silence. The next morning's intelligence laid out my path clearly. First, winter would hit in 3 months. This cabin wouldn't survive the cold. But if I trained hard enough to reach Black Iron Knight level by then, my body would be tough enough to endure it. Second, the sea dragon toe bones still had traces of marrow essence inside. If I slow cooked it in the clay pot over gentle heat, the essence would seep out. Drinking it and training would push me to mid-stage apprentice night within 2 weeks. Third, John had a huge stockpile of dried cow dung he'd been saving to sell in winter for food money. It burned long and steady with no smoke, perfect for slow cooking. After seeing my strength yesterday, he was afraid of me. I could buy it at 1 copper per 10 pounds. I went straight to John's place. I told him to keep delivering hay to the castle daily without fail, and to report any orders from the castle to me immediately. Then I pointed at his mountain of dried dung and asked the price. 1 copper per 10 pounds. I handed him a silver coin and ordered 1,000 pounds. He practically danced with joy and offered to build me a cooking stove. He came back to my cabin and stacked stones into a sturdy little hearth, packed it with mud, left an opening for fuel, and topped it with stone rails for holding a pot. Once he left, I cleaned the bone staff and the clay pot in the stream, set the pot on the stove, filled it with water, dropped the bone in, and lit the fire. An hour later, the water was still clear. The bone just sat there, unchanged. Is this going to take days? I muttered. I gave up staring at it. I built a second little stove outside, set up my helmet pot, boiled water, crumbled black bread into it, and made myself a bowl of mush. I sat in the doorway of my cabin eating porridge, watching the clay pot with the dragon bones simmering away, and waited. The next morning, Bob and his carpenters arrived with 2 more carts of lumber. They got straight to work without me saying a word. John came with a cartload of dried cow dung and started stacking it neatly in one of the stalls. I told Bob to add 2 small storage sheds on either side of the warehouse. Then I asked John to pass a message to the castle steward next time he delivered hay. The first 2 stalls were ready, and horses could be sent over any time. I cut a couple of willow branches from the stream bank and carved myself a pair of long chopsticks and a wooden spoon. Then I sat and stared at the clay pot. A full day of simmering, and the water was still clear. The bone hadn't changed at all. That night, I fell asleep watching the pot. I jolted awake in the middle of the night. The water had boiled down dangerously low, almost dry. I scrambled to refill it. Then I checked my intelligence. First, war was coming. Every autumn, the orc tribes from the northern grasslands raided south to steal grain and capture people. In 3 days, the Baron would lead 500 men to garrison a fortress called North Wind, 80 miles north of town. During the occupation, some orcs would slip past the defenses and raid deeper into human territory. Second, the castle's war horses and grooms would march with the Baron. The newly purchased pregnant mare would be sent to my pasture tomorrow. Third, the dragon bone's old clotted blood had finally begun to dissolve after the long, slow cooking. If I kept the water level up and the fire gentle, it would keep seeping out. The broth already contained a small amount of marrow essence. Drinking it while practicing the wind-breaking slash would speed up my training. Fourth, the Shark Pearl's alchemy array contained multiple properties: growth through fusion, spatial storage, creature binding, and soul binding. If I combined the Shark Pearl, the magic pearl stuck in the bone, and the magic core from the silver fin bream into one unified core, the array's growth potential would increase massively. When activated, the array would read my intent and shape itself accordingly. But I needed to reach Black Iron Knight first. Only then could I use Battle Aura to forge spirit materials and truly refine a life-bound soul weapon. War. I thought about that for a while. Nomads raiding farmers. The same story from my previous life. Huns, Turks, Mongols. Different names, same tragedy. The ones who die are always the common people at the bottom. I shook it off. That wasn't my problem right now. I looked into the pot. The bone was the same, but thin threads of dark red were floating on the surface. The old blood was finally breaking down. I scooped out a spoonful of broth and tasted it. A faint warmth spread through my body instantly. Then I cracked open the old copy of Tales of Curiosities and tore the spine apart. A golden slip of paper fell out. I unfolded it by firelight and read every word carefully. Wind-breaking slash. A speed-based night combat technique. The idea was to channel all your power, feet, core, shoulders, wrist, into one explosive instant, concentrating everything into the blade so fast the enemy couldn't react. At its peak, the wind wouldn't even have time to howl before the sword reached its target. I couldn't use real battle aura yet, no seed condensed, but I could drill the form and the timing, building muscle memory for when the power came. I drained the bowl of broth, picked up my longsword, and walked outside into the moonlight. I raised the blade. Swung. Too slow. Again. Still too slow. Again, one slash after another. The same motion repeated under the moon, over and over, a small figure alone on the dark hillside, chasing speed. I practiced through the entire night. From the moment I woke and drank that first bowl of dragon bone broth, I couldn't stop. The essence inside it burned like a small fire in my body, pushing away all tiredness and sleep. Every swing of the sword sent a thread of warmth deeper into my muscles and bones. At dawn I stopped, hands trembling, breathing hard. I checked the pot. The blood stains on the bone were fading. Thin red threads floated in the water. I ladled out a bowl, blew on it, and drank. The warmth spread through me again. I refilled the pot and kept going. When Bob and his carpenters arrived with their carts, they saw me swinging my sword and froze. "Has he been at it all night?" one of them whispered. They hurried past without another word and got to work on the warehouse. I trained all day. Drink broth, practice, drink broth, practice. The sun crossed the sky and I barely noticed. That night, the new intelligence told me exactly what I needed. 20 more threads of blood essence plus 6 hours of basic sword work would push me to mid-stage apprentice night. It also said my brother would bring the pregnant mare tomorrow afternoon and tell me about the orc invasion. And Bob's crew would be called up to march with the Baron's army tonight, meaning the warehouse had to be finished today or not at all. I called Bob over and told him to finish the warehouse today. Lower the standards, just make it not leak. He looked pained and tried to argue for 2 more days. "Today," I said. "I'll take responsibility." He sighed and went back to work. I slept a few hours, then woke before dawn and went straight for the pot. Half a bowl of hot broth, then out the door with my sword. Slash, thrust, sweep, block. Over and over. The warmth inside me grew stronger with each round, hotter, almost painful, like liquid fire running through my veins. Around midday, I swung the sword and felt something snap open in my core. A surge of heat erupted from my dantian and flooded through my entire body. My muscles tightened, my bones hardened, my senses sharpened. Even my breathing felt more powerful. I stood still, eyes closed, feeling the change settle into every part of me. Mid-stage apprentice night. Done. My stomach growled so loud it startled me. I laughed, set up my little iron helmet pot on the outdoor stove, and cooked myself a thick bowl of grain porridge. I sat on a stump outside my cabin, eating slowly, feeling satisfied. Then I heard hoofbeats. 2 horses coming down the trail. I set the pot down and ran to meet them. "Big brother," Jolin pulled up and jumped off his horse. He took one look at me, and his eyes went wide. "Alan, you've gotten bigger. Taller too." My brother noticed I'd gotten bigger and taller. I laughed it off and changed the subject. He looked over the cabin and told me he was leaving tomorrow, marching with the Baron to Northwind Fortress to hold the line against the orc raids. He said it happened every autumn and that most of the time they just sat in the fortress without seeing real combat. He'd come back when the snow fell. Before leaving, he told me something that surprised me. The carpenters, including Bob and his sons, had also been called up to march north. Something was different this year. In 6 previous campaigns, they'd never been asked to bring builders. The North must be in real trouble. I asked Jolin about his training. He admitted he wasn't an apprentice knight yet, but said he'd been feeling warmth flowing through his body when he practiced. He explained that capturing and controlling that warmth was the threshold for becoming an apprentice knight, and compressing it into a battle or a seed was what made a black iron knight. He told me he'd mention my name to the Baron and to Andre. In 2 years, if I grew strong enough, Andre would give me a chance to prove my loyalty and possibly become a squire. Then he rode away. I drank a bowl of broth and went back to swinging my sword. A month passed. The grass turned from green to yellow. Every day was the same. Drink dragon bone broth, practice sword work, drink more broth, practice more. The bone in the pot slowly gave up its essence, thread by thread. One November morning, the intelligence gave me 3 pieces. First, the war up north was grinding on. Orcs were pushing against a neighboring territory 200 miles east of Northwind Fortress. For now, our territory was safe. Second, the orc invasion had driven animals south. A herd of 12 elk was migrating this way. They'd reach the pasture this afternoon and stop at the stream to drink. If I hid in the willow tree above the water and used wind-breaking slash at the right moment, I could kill one. But the herd would leave quickly. I'd only get one chance. Third, John's family had found out I was just a stable boy, not a noble, not a real sir. They were starting to resent me. John himself was still obedient because he'd seen my strength, but his family was grumbling. I studied the stream and the willow tree. November had stripped most of the leaves. I'd be visible. But elk were animals, not soldiers. I decided to simply lie on a thick branch and stay perfectly still, like a piece of wood. I drank my broth, took my sword, climbed the fattest willow trunk, and lay flat. The sun warmed my face. I controlled my breathing and waited. Time crawled. Then I heard it. Hoofbeats from the northwest. A line of brown shapes cresting the hills. The herd slowed at the edge of the pasture. The lead bull stopped and sniffed the air, scanning for danger. The pregnant mare in the paddock glanced at them, then went back to eating. That seemed to reassure them. They drifted into the pasture, nibbling dead grass, moving closer to the stream. One young doe reached the water first and drank. Then another. They relaxed. I waited. Finally, a bull walked right under my tree and lowered his head to drink. Long, slow gulps. He finished, shook his head, and started to turn away. The instant he moved, I kicked off the branch and launched myself downward like an arrow. Wind-breaking slash. The sword sang through the air with a piercing shriek. The bull's head separated from its body. Blood sprayed everywhere. The headless body took one more step and crashed to the ground. The rest of the herd scattered in an instant. I dropped to my knees beside the carcass and pressed my mouth to the neck, drinking the hot blood pouring out. It was scalding and iron-sweet. I drank until the flow slowed to a trickle. When I looked up, my face covered in blood, I saw John standing in the distance holding a sickle, staring at me like he'd seen a ghost. I waved him over. He came on shaky legs, looked at the headless elk on the ground, and nearly collapsed. I told him to skin it. He stammered that he'd seen his father skin a wolf once. Close enough. I cut the belly open, reached in, and pulled out the heart, big as my fist. Then I handed him the knife and told him all the organs were his to keep. He couldn't believe his luck. He dropped to his knees and started working, hands trembling with excitement. I took the heart back to my cabin, dropped it in the iron pot, and set it over the fire to stew. Then I sat on my stump in the doorway, watching John work in the distance, and smiled. As for his family's resentment, let them grumble. In a world where power belongs to the individual, complaints without strength behind them mean nothing. After a good meal of elk meat, I woke up feeling great and checked the morning intelligence. First, eating beast meat had boosted my blood and energy. If I kept eating well, I'd reach black ironite faster. Second, yesterday's deer blood had soaked into the ground and was feeding something called a warm jade buried deep underground. Over the next month, it would drain the life from everything nearby. First, the grass around the willows would die, then the trees themselves, and finally the stream would dry up. Worse, the smell of blood had attracted a pair of hunting hawks. They'd circle the area looking for food, and they were aggressive toward humans. Third, the new body-tempering grass shoots growing by the rock pile needed 2 full seasons to mature. But the immature plants had a powerful numbing effect. I filed that third piece away and went outside to start training. That's when I noticed my iron pot lying on the ground, empty. Every piece of elk meat I'd cooked last night was gone. No footprints. No claw marks on the pot. Nothing. I cooked a fresh batch and started practicing. The smell of meat filled the air. Then suddenly, a wave of dread hit me. Something was watching me. I threw myself sideways into the cabin just as a dark shape screamed past where I'd been standing. A massive hawk landed on a dead tree nearby, golden eyes locked on my pot. Before I could do anything, it dove, snatched a chunk of meat in its talons, and vanished into the sky. So that was my thief. I couldn't train with that thing circling overhead. It was too fast, too fierce, and it could fly. If I missed, it would just leave and come back later. I had to deal with it. First, I ran to warn John. I put the iron pot on my head like a helmet, stuffed with dry grass for padding, held my sword in one hand, and sprinted to his house, checking the sky every few seconds. John nearly fainted when I told him. He dropped to his knees begging me to ride to the castle for archers. I told him the real archers were all at the northern fortress with the Baron. Even if the castle sent someone, the hawks would just hide until they left. This was our problem to solve. I told him to think about what he could offer me in exchange for protection and left. On my way back, I remembered the intelligence said, a pair of hawks. I'd only seen one. Where was the second? Then I remembered the third piece. Immature body-tempering grass had a strong numbing effect. I ran to the rock pile and pulled up 5 young shoots. Back at the cabin, I took a deer leg, slashed it open with my dagger, crushed the grass leaves, and smeared the juice all over the meat. I tied it up with straw and placed it in the open near the willow trees where the blood smell was strongest. Then I hid inside the cabin, watching through the crack in the door. I waited all day, morning to noon to afternoon to evening. The hawk never came. At dusk, I sighed, walked out, and picked up the bait. The green juice had dried on the surface. If not today, then tomorrow. That night, I lay on my straw mat, forcing myself to stay awake. Warm jade, dying willows, hawks, numbing grass. The pieces were all there. I just needed the system to show me how they fit together. I was waiting for midnight, waiting for the next update. I stayed awake all night waiting for the intelligence to update. When it finally came, 3 pieces appeared. First, the hawks had been chased south from North Wind City by a squad of knights. One pair fled to a small forest about 10 miles south of my pasture. The female had an injured wing and couldn't hunt, so the male was doing all the food runs. He'd come to my cabin around 5 in the morning looking for deer meat. If I left the drug bait out, he'd take it back to the nest. Once the drug kicked in, I could follow and get both birds. Second, between the elk meat and the dragon bone broth, I was close to a breakthrough. A big push of meat would tip me into late-stage apprentice night. Third, the dragon bone marrow was finally releasing properly after over a month of simmering. If I ate enough meat to fuel my body's transformation and then drank the marrow essence, I could gather my battle aura and condense a battle aura seed. I grinned in the dark. These hawks weren't just a threat, they were a meat delivery. I grabbed the deer leg, crushed my last 2 immature body-tempering grass shoots, and smeared the numbing juice all over the meat. I set it on the stump outside my door, saddled the mare, and waited. Just as the eastern sky began to lighten, I heard wing beats. A black shape streaked in from the west, circled once, dove, snatched the deer leg, and shot back into the sky. It flew west first, then curved south. Clever bird, trying to throw off any follower. I leaped onto the mare and galloped after it, eyes locked on the shrinking black. 10 miles south, I found a small hill covered with a few hundred pine and cedar trees. The hawk had disappeared into the crown of the tallest one. I tied the mare outside the tree line, drew my sword, and walked in. I was muttering to myself, of all the villages around here, you had to pick my pasture to steal from. I reached the base of the tall tree and looked up. The canopy was too thick to see through. I was trying to figure out how to climb when something crashed down from above and hit the ground with a heavy thud. I jumped back, sword raised. It was the male hawk, huge, gray-brown feathers, wingspan wider than I was tall. It lay on its side, drooling, eyes half shut. The drug had knocked it out cold. One clean swing took its head off. Then I remembered, there were 2. I looked up at the tree again. Too tall to climb. Frustrated, I kicked the trunk hard. A second body tumbled out of the canopy and hit the ground, flapping a broken wing with an arrow shaft sticking out of it. The female, still conscious, still struggling. Another swing. Another head rolled. I pulled the broken arrow from the female's wing. Good iron tip, hardwood shaft, white feather fletching. Snapped in half, but quality work. I tucked it in my belt. I dragged both birds out by their feet, blood trailing behind me in 2 long red lines. Hung them across the mare's back, calmed her down, and rode home. Passing John's house, I called out. He came stumbling out with a clay pot on his head for protection. When he saw the 2 massive hawks draped over my horse, his jaw dropped. You killed them. Thank heavens. Thank you. Merciful Lord Allen. I told him to clean the horse, then process the birds, save every feather, bone, and claw. The meat was for eating. I also told him to ask around about someone who could make a bow. Back at my cabin, I cooked a huge pot of deer meat and started eating. As the food hit my stomach, all the energy I'd been building, the broth, the elk blood, the days of training, suddenly ignited. Heat erupted from my dantian and surged through my whole body. When it settled, I clenched my fist. Late-stage apprentice night. I looked at the dragon bones still simmering in the clay pot and smiled. Black iron night. Soon, very soon, I sat back down and kept eating. Half a month slipped by. The grass turned completely yellow and crunched under my feet. I'd been drinking dragon bone broth and practicing sword work every single day without rest. The energy inside me had grown enormous. My dantian felt like a jar filled to the brim, ready to overflow. But it wouldn't. I'd reached the peak of apprentice night, and the last step was condensing a battle aura seed. Every time I tried following the method on the parchment, the energy would spin and tighten in my core, almost taking shape, then scatter. I didn't know what I was missing. So I kept training and waiting. Then the morning intelligence finally brought the answer. First, the war up north was going badly. The Red Maple Earls' territory was falling to the Orcs, piece by piece. North Wind City was in a panic, and noble families were sending their children south to the capital. The Baron had decided to send his eldest son Andre to escort the family to the capital tomorrow morning. Second, the steward COR would come to the pasture this afternoon to take the pregnant mare and most of the stored hay. He'd tell me and John to plant more grass seed in spring and expand the pasture for future horses. Third, if I tapped the dragon toe bone gently with a stick, the marrow and the magic pearl inside would come loose. I should keep simmering them. The sea dragon's essence blood coating the pearl would dissolve into the broth. At midnight, drinking some of it would give me water attribute battle aura, and I'd break through to Black Iron Knight in one push. I nearly shouted with joy. Then I remembered the soul weapon. Once I became a Black Iron Knight, I could use battle aura to shape spirit materials and refine a life-bound soul weapon using the Shark Pearl's alchemy array. I sat down and started planning what shape it should take. Water attribute aura meant I'd be strongest on water. The sea would be my domain someday, but I didn't want to limit myself. Land, sea, air, all three mattered. A ship, that was the answer. A ship works on water. It could fly if I made it a flying vessel. It could dive like a submarine. Even in space someday, the shape would still work. The alchemy array's properties, growth through fusion, spatial storage, creature binding, soul binding, meant I could store supplies inside it. Even carry an army. I grabbed a stick and started sketching on the ground. A spindle shape, 6 layers, 3 above, 3 below, connected as one structure. Hollow compartments between the layers for storage and buffering, modeled after bone density patterns for maximum strength. No sails needed since it would run on my own power. A flagpole at the bow for a banner. When I stepped back to look at my drawing, I laughed. It looked like a carved peach pit, a tiny oval shape with holes drilled in it. Impossible to see the interior structure from outside. Good enough, I muttered. It can evolve later. All those little compartments are just slots for future upgrades. That afternoon, the steward COR arrived with a line of ox carts. He barely recognized me. I'd grown taller and broader in just a month. He noticed the long sword at my hip and asked if Horg had made it. I told him yes. His men loaded 10 carts of hay and left the rest in my warehouse. Then he went to check the mare. I described her behavior. Eating more, moving less, lying in sunny spots, nuzzling her own belly. Hor's eyes widened. She's really pregnant. He stroked her neck, suddenly excited. If she produces a good foal, the Baron will be very pleased. He told me to take care of the remaining hay and expand the pasture in spring, Baron's orders. Then he rode off in a hurry, eager to deliver the news about the foal. I watched him disappear down the road, then turned back toward my cabin and the simmering clay pot. Tonight at midnight, everything would change. That evening, after the last farmhands left with their carts of hay, I sat alone in my cabin and read through the battle aura condensation method one more time. Everything I'd been doing was correct. The energy paths, the timing, the technique. What I'd been missing was the catalyst. The sea dragon's essence blood. I stared at the clay pot bubbling on the stove. That bone had been simmering for nearly 2 months. I picked up the bone and held it over the pot. Then I took a willow stick and started tapping, gently, steadily, from top to bottom. 1 tap, 10, 100, 1,000. My arm went numb. I kept going. Then, a heavy splash. The entire mass of marrow slid out of the bone and dropped into the pot. I kept tapping until nothing more dripped out, then collapsed on the ground, rubbing my trembling arm. 2 months of cooking, and the bone was still cool to the touch. 6th rank magical beasts were something else entirely. I lay on my back and waited for midnight. No clock, no way to tell time, but I knew the intelligence always updated at the stroke of 12. When it came, 3 pieces. First, the sea dragon essence blood had fully dissolved. The marrow had reached its perfect state. Drink now, follow the condensation method, and I'd form a water attribute battle aura seed. Black Iron Knight. Second, the willow tree by the stream would die completely at noon today. But as it died, its heartwood, transformed by the warm jade underground and other forces, would become a first-rank spirit material. It would be at the junction of trunk and ground. Handle with care. Third, if I fed my own battle aura into a strand of hair for 1 hour a day, 3 days running, the hair would become a spirit material carrying my soul imprint. perfect for strengthening the bond between a soul weapon and its master. I grabbed the clay pot and set it on my straw mat. The broth inside was thick and white as milk, radiating energy I could feel through the clay. I scooped a spoonful and swallowed. Cool. It melted the instant it touched my tongue and slid down my throat. Then a rush of cold energy exploded from my stomach. I closed my eyes and guided it along the paths described in the condensation method, channeling everything toward my dantian. A blue vortex formed inside my core. It began pulling in all the scattered energy throughout my body, drawing it down to the bottom of the spiral. I took another spoonful. The vortex spun faster, stronger. Blue light began flowing out from the top, streaming through my meridians, soaking into every inch of muscle and bone. My muscles trembled. My bones tingled. My veins expanded. The light circled back and fed into the vortex again. The spiral shuddered once, then stabilized, spinning smooth and steady, constantly absorbing energy and releasing blue light in an endless cycle. I looked inward at that glowing vortex connecting everything inside me, and joy surged up from somewhere deeper than thought. It was the joy of crossing a threshold, of becoming something more than I was. I clenched my fist. Black Iron Knight. I was extraordinary now. I immediately started on the hair. Sitting cross-legged, I guided a thread of blue battle aura to a single strand behind my ear. The hair grew warm, absorbing the energy, turning faintly blue and harder than steel wire. I tried feeding a second strand at the same time, but couldn't maintain both. The aura flow stuttered. So I focused on one at a time. Hours vanished. I lost all sense of time until a sharp cracking sound broke my concentration. Sunlight poured through the gaps in the cabin walls. It was already noon. I stepped outside and looked toward the stream. The willow tree was dead, bark split open, branches black and fallen, standing like a giant skeleton. I put a pot of deer meat on the stove first. Then I grabbed my axe and walked to the tree. I circled it once, channeled battle aura into my foot, and kicked the trunk. The entire tree exploded into splinters. 2 months of the warm jade draining its life had rotted it completely hollow inside. My aura-enhanced kick turned the whole thing to dust. I worried I'd been too rough and might have damaged the spirit material. I knelt down and carefully dug through the rotten wood and dry earth at the base where trunk met ground. My axe clinked against something hard. I set the axe aside and dug with my fingers. There, buried in the decayed heartwood, was a piece of emerald green crystal the size of an egg, glowing faintly with pale green light. Cool to the touch, dense with hidden life force. It didn't feel like wood at all, more like jade. Life from death, I murmured. Beautiful. I tucked it carefully into my shirt, looked at the pile of wood dust that used to be a tree, and walked back to my cabin. The deer meat should be ready by now. John happened to be outside when I kicked that willow tree apart. I caught a glimpse of him standing at his doorway, frozen, bucket on the ground, staring at the cloud of wood dust where a full-grown tree had been a second ago. He collapsed against his doorframe. I glanced over, smirked, and didn't bother going to check on him. Back inside, I sat cross-legged and continued feeding battle aura into my hair. One strand at a time, each one slowly turning blue and hard as wire under the flow of energy. The feeling was addictive, that gentle current of power running through me, reshaping something as simple as a strand of hair into a spirit material carrying my soul's imprint. I lost myself in it. One strand, then another, then another. When I finally stopped, the cabin was pitch dark. Only a few embers glowed in the stove. The midnight intelligence brought 3 pieces, and none of them were good. First, John had been completely broken by what he saw. He and his family would obey me absolutely from now on, out of pure terror. Second, the orc invasion was escalating. They'd hit a wall at the Red Maple Earl's territory, so the orc chieftain was opening a new front. A tribal war leader called Kagul the Bone Crusher, a warrior on par with a Silver Knight, had been ordered to attack Northwind Fortress. He'd arrive in 3 days. Third, the single-mast sailboat the Baron had bought at the coastal village was being sent south on an evacuation run. My stomach nodded. A Silver Knight. The Baron was only black iron, 2 full ranks below, and my brother Jolan was there at that fortress. He wasn't even an apprentice knight yet, just an ordinary squire with a sharp sword and good instincts. I paced the cabin, fists clenching and unclenching. The whole barony had exactly one extraordinary warrior. 1. The Baron had ruled this land for decades with nothing but his personal strength and the fear it inspired. that worked fine against wolves and wild boars. Against a silver-ranked orc commander with an army behind him? Brother, don't die on me. I thought about riding north. But what would one freshly minted black iron knight do on a battlefield where a silver was leading the charge? I'd just be one more body. All I could do was wait. Wait for the intelligence to show me an opening. Wait and keep getting stronger. The winter wind crept through the gaps in my cabin walls. I sat back down, crossed my legs, and guided my battle aura back to the next strand of hair. For 10 days straight, the intelligence was nothing but war reports. The Bone Crusher Kagul and his orcs were hammering Northwind Fortress. The defenders fought back from the walls in bloody back-and-forth battles. My brother Jolin was there beside the Baron, nearly dying several times. I read every update with a knot in my stomach, but there was nothing I could do. I just sat in my cabin, feeding battle aura into my hair strands, one by one. Then one morning, 5 pieces of intelligence appeared, the most I'd ever received at once. 4 of them were about my soul weapon. First, a banner, my Emperor's Banner, could be woven from 108 aura-nurtured hair strands, with the willow heartwood carved into the pole. It could be refined as part of the soul weapon or used on its own. Second, the warm jade underground had spent over a month absorbing life force and earth energy. It had transformed into a yin-yang jade, carrying both polarities. It could serve as the energy conduit material for the soul weapon. It was buried 5 meters below the dead willow's roots. Third, the actual forging process. I'd need to saturate the sea dragon toe bone with battle aura over and over, imprinting it with my life force and soul signature, reshaping it into a half-energy state, then stretching it into the ship's frame. Next, do the same with the yin-yang jade, threading it through the hull like blood vessels to form an energy circuit. Finally, split the green tree heart, half fused into the hull for growth and vitality, half shaped into the banner pole. Fourth, once the hull was complete, place the shark pearl, the magic core, and the magic pearl at the center. Add drops of my own blood, then flood everything with battle aura. The blood mixed with magic and aura would activate the alchemy array inside the shark pearl. The array would spread across the entire weapon, brand it with my soul, adapt its properties to my intentions, and fine-tune the shape. During this process, the weapon would merge with my soul, automatically opening a spiritual sea in my mind. Fifth, the orc chieftain was frustrated with Kagul's slow progress and was sending small raiding parties to slip behind human lines, targeting supply routes, villages, and small forts deep in human territory. My heart was pounding. For pieces about the soul weapon, the system was responding to my desperate desire for it. Now I understood the pattern better. Normal intelligence tracked things connected to me by fate, but when I wanted something badly enough and the conditions aligned, extra pieces appeared to guide me. I finished nurturing the last of the 108 hair strands. The moment the final one was done, I could feel every single one of them, as clearly as my own fingers. Under battle aura, they moved like living things. I stepped outside and shouted for John. My voice, charged with aura, boomed across the pasture like thunder. John came stumbling out and fell to his knees in front of me. I gave him 2 tasks. First, take his whole family to where the willow tree used to stand and dig 5 meters down. There was something buried there that I needed. Second, I told him the truth about the war. The orcs had pushed deep into human territory. The Baron's family had already fled south. Raiding parties would come eventually. If we wanted to survive, we had to prepare ourselves. I needed him to quietly find people willing to follow me and start making equipment. But I warned him, keep it secret. The Baron was still alive, and the fortress still stood. If the castle guards heard him talking about raising men, they'd arrest him for treason. He swore secrecy and ran off with his family, shovels in hand. I went back inside and cleaned the cabin thoroughly. Swept the floor, organized everything, wiped down the stove. Then I sat on my mat and emptied my coin purse. Silver coins, the golden technique paper, the parchment, the sharp pearl, the magic core, and the golden fish scale. I held up the scale and studied it. Of all my materials, it was the only one without a clear purpose yet. Probably meant to be ground into powder and consumed, like the Baron had done with the magical fish bones for his guards. I picked up the dragon toe bone and tried pushing battle aura into it. Blue energy seeped from my palms into the bone. It drank up everything I gave it like a dry sponge and showed no change at all. No wonder the intelligence said to use the bone marrow essence to replenish what I spend. I set the bone down, walked outside, and sat on my stump. In the distance, John's family was digging furiously by the stream, dirt flying. I watched them work and let my breathing slow. My mind grew still and clear. I was preparing, adjusting, getting myself into the right state of mind for what came next, the forging of my soul weapon. Near sunset, John came running with something in his hands, stumbling and shouting. He dropped to his knees and held it up, a palm-sized oval stone, half white and half black, the two colors twisting around each other like two fish chasing each other's tails. The yin-yang jade. I told him good work and sent him away. Don't come near me for the next few days. I barred the door, set the clay pot between my legs, and laid out everything beside me. The dragon toe bone, the yin-yang jade, the green tree heart, the shark pearl, the magic core, the magic pearl, and 108 glowing hair strands still attached to my head. I swallowed a spoonful of marrow essence. Cool energy flooded my meridians and filled my core. Then I grabbed the dragon bone and started pushing battle aura into it through both palms. Hours passed. I kept pouring aura in, drinking essence whenever I ran low. Eventually, I felt the energy begin cycling back, flowing in through one hand and returning through the other, each pass more refined and pure than the last. Then the bone started cracking. Pieces of gray dead matter flaked off and crumbled to dust. The 2-meter staff shrank and shrank until all that remained was a fist-sized sphere of pure white essence spinning in my palm, a half-energy body, glowing with blue light. I closed my eyes and pictured the ship in my mind. Spindle-shaped, 6 layers, hollow compartments, channels only where needed. I guided the essence to stretch and reshape. Slowly, a tiny ship the size of my palm took form. I gulped more essence and grabbed the yin-yang jade. Same process. Flood it with aura until it became a half-energy body. Then I pressed it into the ship. The black and white energies separated inside, yang rising to the upper layers, yin settling below, and began chasing each other through the hull, carving energy channels as they went. Next, the green tree heart. Aura turned it into a glowing emerald half-energy body. I split it in two. One half I pushed into the ship's hull, giving it life and the ability to grow. The other half I stretched and shaped into a slender green pole. Then I reached up with my aura and touched all 108 hair strands at once. They lit up, wove themselves together above my head into a tiny banner, then snapped free from the roots and drifted down. I caught the banner pole, stabbed it through the woven flag, and planted it at the bow of the little ship. Last step, I let the aura pull back. Without its support, the materials fused together into a single solid vessel. I poured the remaining marrow essence down my throat, then shoved the shark pearl, the magic core, and the magic pearl into the ship's center. I drew my dagger and slashed my right palm open. Blood mixed with battle aura seeped into the ship, painting red lines across its surface. I drove the bloody aura straight into the magic pearl and magic core. 2 sharp cracks, both shattered at the same time. Aura and magic carrying my blood crashed into the shark pearl like a flood. The pearl trembled violently, and an array pattern exploded outward from it, covering the entire ship in an instant. The pattern spun 3 times, then split into 6 symmetrical rings that rotated 6 times before collapsing inward, etching countless fine lines across every surface. Then something burst from the central array, a half-human, half-fish phantom with a twisted, furious face. The ancient alchemist's remnant soul. It thrashed inside the array, snarling at me. Before I could react, a second phantom, the silver fin bream spirit, lunged out and bit the merman's neck. The 2 spectral forms tore at each other, ripping off fragments of soul energy that scattered like sparks. I acted on instinct. I gathered my aura, mixed it with magic and my own blood, and began absorbing those drifting soul fragments. Under my guidance, they condensed into a small water serpent that swam through the ship's interior, devouring every scrap of energy and growing larger with each bite. The 2 ghost forms weakened, flickering, nearly gone. I saw my chance. The water serpent whipped its tail and smashed the merman in half. It screamed silently, shuddering. Then the serpent coiled around the fish spirit and crushed it. The merman's ghost tried to flee back into the pearl. The serpent slammed through it and shattered it to nothing. The serpent consumed every last fragment, then dove deep into the ship. 7 array rings blazed to life. The shattered remains of the 3 pearls compressed and fused at the center into a single bead the size of a longan fruit. It settled into the ship's core, the heart of my soul weapon. Then the ship erupted with blue light and shot straight into my forehead. Inside my mind, the water serpent thrashed wildly, devouring everything around it, carving out a vast, empty space, my spiritual sea. When its energy was spent, it crawled back into the ship and went still. The soul weapon floated at the center of my new spiritual sea, glowing softly blue. At the bow, the water serpent had wrapped itself around the Emperor's banner pole, becoming a permanent pattern woven into the flag. It was done. My soul weapon was complete. I opened my eyes and looked at the fading scar on my palm. The soul weapon floated in my mind, a tiny blood-red ship with 6 layers, hundreds of empty compartments waiting to be filled. I tested it immediately, picked up my dagger, thought about storing it. It vanished from my hand and appeared inside one of the ship's chambers. I pulled it back out, put it in again. Instant every time. The storage space was probably over 100 cubic meters. Plenty for now. I packed everything away, the clay pot, the iron helmet pot, dried meat, black bread, each item sorted into different compartments. Then I walked outside and stretched in the autumn sun. John ran over and threw himself flat on the ground. He'd been to town yesterday and heard the Baron had sent a messenger back. The castle had declared martial law, ordering all subjects to arm themselves and help defend. I laughed bitterly. Arm themselves with what? Wooden pitchforks against orc war axes? I asked how his recruiting had gone. 3 days, and the few people he'd found had all gone to the castle instead. Useless. I waved him away. Then I sat down and finally caught up on the intelligence I'd missed during the days I'd spent forging the soul weapon. It was all war reports, the fortress holding, orcs pressing, back and forth. Today's update made my blood run cold. First, orc raiding parties had been smashing through farming villages easily. One group of 10 orcs had enslaved over 100 farmers and was marching on Black Pine Town this afternoon. They planned to hit the Baron's castle too. Second, a castle guard carrying a message back to the fortress had been chased by an orc scout. The guard fled toward my pasture and was caught and killed in the hills to the north. The orc would reach my pasture around 3 this afternoon, find the stables and warehouse, and hide in the warehouse to observe. Third, the Baron's castle had a hidden underground vault. 200 pounds of wheat, 500 of oats. And in the treasure room, 30 gold coins, 300 silver, plus a full set of knight's armor and longsword. The vault was on the 2nd basement level, behind a secret door in the storage cellar, opened by pressing a stone brick on the east wall. I broke out in a cold sweat. If I'd still been deep in the forging trance, that orc would have walked right up to my door. I sheathed my longsword into the soul weapon storage space and grabbed a wooden staff. Then I walked toward the warehouse. The stench hit me before I got there, blood, sweat, and animal musk, thick enough to choke on. I peered through a crack in the wooden wall. A massive figure crouched behind a hay pile in the corner, motionless. I pulled the sword back out of storage with a thought, ready to rush in, but the orc burst out first, swinging an enormous spiked club and howling. I sidestepped. The club whistled past. I swung my sword, and it clanged against the club so hard my arm went numb. I used the rebound to spin and slash at its exposed back. The blade cut through, spraying blood. The orc roared and whirled around, swinging wildly. I dodged left, right, ducking low. It kept smashing at empty ground. Then I feinted low, making it swing downward, and launched myself upward off both feet. Wind-breaking slash. The sword sang through the air and cut the spiked club clean in half. The orc staggered back, staring at the broken stump in its hand. In that instant of shock, I closed the gap in 3 steps and drove my sword straight through its throat. The blade punched out the back of its neck. Blood ran down the steel. The orc grabbed at its throat, making choking sounds, eyes bulging with disbelief. I pulled the sword free and stepped back. It crashed to the ground and didn't move again. I searched the body. A leather pouch with some coins and a handful of dried meat. Couldn't tell what kind of meat, didn't want to know. I stored the coins in my soul weapon and tossed the meat aside. No armor, no proper weapon. The orc hadn't even looted the dead guard. I followed its footprints back over the hills and found a black horse grazing on dead grass at the edge of a small forest. I knew that horse. Little Black, from the castle stable. I grabbed the reins and climbed on. The horse recognized me and nuzzled my hand. I rode him into the trees, and less than a mile in, I found the guard's body lying in the brush. Face pale, blood at the corners of his mouth, eyes staring at nothing. I dismounted, stood over him for a moment, and closed his eyes. You did your duty, brother. Rest now. I took his broken half-sword, mounted Little Black, and rode hard toward the Baron's castle. Little Black, I said, leaning forward, tonight we might be pulling off something big. I rode toward Black Pine Town, and my heart sank. Smoke billowed from the buildings. Screams, war cries, and the howling of orcs filled the air. The smell of blood and burning flesh carried on the wind. I gripped the broken sword and charged in on Little Black. The orcs at the edge of town spotted me, a kid in rough clothes riding a horse, holding half a broken blade. They laughed. One of them raised a longbow and knocked an arrow, grinning. That's exactly what I wanted. I yanked the reins and galloped south across the wheat fields, making myself look like a panicked boy running for his life. The archer laughed, put the arrow away, and chased me on foot. Just one of them. Perfect. I wheeled the horse around and charged back toward town. At the edge of the buildings, I kicked off the horse's back, launched myself onto a rooftop, and crouched in the thatch. The orc arrived, saw the riderless horse trotting away, and started searching. It noticed the disturbed thatch on the roof and crept around to flank me. I dropped off the far side and slipped into the house next door. Inside, I found an old man lying dead in a pool of blood. I propped his body against the door, then jumped up and braced myself across the ceiling beam. The orc tracked me to this house, peeked through the door crack, and saw a figure slumped behind it. It grinned, kicked the door in, and stabbed at the body. The moment it realized something was wrong, soft flesh, no resistance, I dropped from the beam above. Wind-breaking slash. One clean stroke. Its head spun off its neck and rolled across the floor. I picked up its longbow and quiver, drew an arrow, and tested my aim on the severed head from 5 paces. The arrow punched clean through and pinned it to the ground. Not great range, but workable. I stored the bow and arrows in my sole weapon space and headed toward the castle. The scene there was grim. Bodies piled at the base of the castle walls. Most of them farmers the orcs had enslaved and sent to attack first, using them as disposable shields. They'd all been slaughtered. 8 orcs remained. Their leader, a massive brute, was furious. The castle walls had held. He couldn't break through. I heard him snarling at his men. They'd go raid more villages, capture more slaves, and try again tomorrow. Then he sent one orc to find the one I'd already killed. That idiot chased a child and hasn't come back. The orc jogged toward town, right toward where I was hiding. I circled through the back alleys to get ahead of it. I planted an arrow in the ground where I knew it would look bait. When it bent down to examine it, I shot from the shadows. My first arrow hit the dirt at its feet. It roared and charged. Second arrow grazed its arm. It kept coming. Third arrow, right through the thigh. It stumbled, screaming, ripped the arrow out, and limped toward me with its spiked club raised. I put the bow away and brought the long sword into my hand. One step, wind-breaking slash. Its head left its shoulders before the club came down. The headless body stumbled forward 2 more steps and collapsed. I stood in the fading light, looking toward the castle. 7 orcs left, their leader among them. They were making camp, planning to raid villages in the morning for more human shields. I took a deep breath and disappeared into the ruins of the town. Night fell. The 7 remaining orcs sat around a campfire outside the castle, eating meat and drinking bad liquor. I crouched behind a half-collapsed house, watching, waiting for the right moment. Then their leader suddenly stood up and kicked the fire apart. He'd been thinking about the 2 orcs who never came back. He figured out that whoever killed them wasn't a full knight. A real knight would have charged head-on. It had to be someone weaker, fighting from the shadows. Maybe that boy on the horse. Move. Now, he barked. All 7 grabbed their weapons and ran southeast into the darkness before I could act. I followed to the edge of town and watched them disappear. Southeast. That was the direction out of the barony. I thought about chasing them, but decided against it. Night pursuit against 7 enemies who might set an ambush was too risky. Better to rest and wait for the intelligence update. I found a corner in a ruined house, wrapped myself in a scrap of old clothing, and fell asleep. Meanwhile, inside the castle, things were falling apart. Steward Cor stood at a window, clutching a letter from the Baron. His son Thane came to him, begging him to flee. Only 10 guards remained. No reinforcements were coming. The orcs would return tomorrow with more enslaved farmers. Cor refused to leave. He'd promised the Baron he'd wait. But he gave Thane a heavy purse of coins and told him to take 6 guards and go south to the capital, To find Andre. Thane argued. He didn't want to spend his life as a servant. He wanted to become extraordinary, to be his own master. Cor listened with tired eyes and finally said, "Do what you want. Leave at midnight." After midnight, Thane and 6 guards slipped out the castle's side door and headed southeast under the moonlight. They walked straight into the orcs. Those 7 orcs hadn't actually fled. Their leader had set an ambush on the main road heading southeast, expecting someone to follow. Instead, they caught Thane's group, completely unprepared. All 6 guards died. Thane was captured alive. The orc leader beat the castle's secrets out of Thane. How many defenders remained, where the entrances were, everything. Then they attacked the castle in the dead of night. I woke to screaming. Terrible, drawn-out wails coming from the castle direction. I grabbed my sword and nearly charged out before I remembered to check the intelligence first. 3 pieces, and every one was devastating. First, Thane had been captured, the guards killed, and the orcs had used his information to storm the castle. They were inside now, slaughtering everyone. Second, far worse, the orc commander Koggle the Bone Crusher had captured the Valley Baron's family and used them as leverage. At 2 in the morning, the Valley Baron had opened the gates of North Wind Fortress himself to save his family. The fortress had fallen, but the Black Pine Baron happened to be resting in North Wind City that night. When he realized what was happening, he gathered his closest men and fled south. He'd reach Black Pine Town by 7 this morning. Third, the soul weapon forging process had significantly refined and strengthened my battle aura, but the breakthrough had drained my energy reserves. I needed to replenish. I stood in the dark, face hard as stone, staring toward the castle. The screams kept coming, one after another. 7 orcs were in there right now, killing everyone who remained. I gripped my sword and crept toward the castle through the shadows. The screams from inside made my skin crawl. Just as I was about to step through the main gate, a woman's shriek erupted right behind the door, and the gate slammed shut in my face. My heart nearly stopped. The orcs had set a trap. They'd used someone as bait, waiting for anyone foolish enough to walk in. If I'd been 1 second faster, I'd have taken a club to the back of the skull. I had no choice. I couldn't break through alone in the dark with enemies waiting behind every corner. I'd wait for dawn, when the Baron was supposed to arrive. I found a solid house in town and rested. At first light, hoofbeats thundered down the road. 6 riders, the Black Pine Baron and 5 men, my brother Jolan among them. They'd ridden through the night from Northwind City. The Baron saw the bodies piled at the castle walls and the sealed gate. For a moment, hope flickered in his eyes. Maybe his people were still holding out inside. Then Jolan rode forward and warned him something was wrong. Heavy footsteps boomed from inside the castle, rushing toward the gate. The Baron's face went white. Go? Now! They wheeled their horses and galloped south. The castle gate burst open and 6 orcs poured out, howling, chasing after the riders. 6 orcs ran out. That meant 1 stayed behind to guard the gate. The moment the 6 were far enough away, I sprinted for the castle. The gate was shut again. I cursed. They'd left someone inside, of course. Then I spotted a rope dangling from the right side of the wall. A grappling hook. That must be how they'd gotten in last night. I grabbed the rope and climbed. 10 meters of stone wall. With a black Iron Knight's body, I scaled it in seconds. I peeked over the top. Down below, an orc sat against the wall behind the gate, clutching a spiked club, head drooping. Snoring. I planned to slide down the rope for a silent kill from above. I repositioned the hook and grabbed the rope, and the whole thing slipped loose and fell. The rope whipped across the orc's face with a loud crack. It jumped to its feet instantly, swinging the club upward at me. It hadn't been sleeping at all. It was faking, waiting for exactly this. These orcs aren't supposed to be smart, I muttered in disbelief. It roared and charged for the wall stairs. I pulled out the longbow and started shooting. First arrow grazed its shoulder. It didn't slow down. Second and third hit its body, barely noticed. But I had the height advantage, and the closer it got, the more accurate my shots became. By the time it reached the halfway point on the stairs, it looked like a porcupine. Arrows stuck out of it everywhere. It staggered, swayed, and finally toppled backward, rolling down the stone steps. I walked down after it, put 2 more arrows through its skull to be sure, then ran straight for the underground storage. I threw open the cellar doors and started loading everything into my soul weapon space. Wheat, oats, hundreds of pounds, compartment after compartment filling up. Then I went to the back wall, felt along the stones until I found the loose one the intelligence had described, and pressed it. Click, click, click. The wall split open, revealing a staircase going down. I grabbed a torch and descended into a small hidden chamber. In the center stood a mannequin wearing a complete suit of knight's armor. To the left, a knight's long sword with silver inlay on the scabbard. To the right, 2 chests. I opened them. Gold coins, silver coins. I swept it all into storage. Then I lifted the armor off the stand, took the sword, and stored everything. One last look around the vault. Nothing left behind. I turned and headed back up the stairs. After clearing out the castle vault, I climbed to the watchtower and looked out. 6 figures were walking back along the southeast road toward the castle. The orcs. They'd failed to catch the Baron on foot. I pulled the Black Knight's armor from my sole weapon space and strapped it on piece by piece. It was a little big, but the leather straps let me adjust it well enough. Heavy, but with a Black Iron Knight's body, I could still move. I hung the Baron's long sword at my hip, took up the longbow and a full quiver, and crouched behind the wall to wait. The 6 orcs came strolling back without a care, arguing about whether to stay or go raiding before the main orc army arrived. The moment they reached the gate, I stood up on the wall. My first arrow hit the ground at their feet. They looked up and saw a figure in full armor drawing another arrow. A human, one roared. My second arrow sailed past an orc's ear. They laughed. No aim. He's a beginner, and charged the gate, smashing it with their clubs. I didn't try to aim. I just kept shooting as fast as I could. Arrow after arrow rained down. 3 orcs took hits, shoulder, back, thigh. Not lethal, but they were bleeding hard. The orc leader grabbed a dead farmer's body as a shield, walked to the gate, and split it open with one swing of his iron axe. He kicked the door in, and they rushed through. One orc rounded the corner at the bottom of the stairs and took my last javelin straight through the chest. The force knocked it backward into the orc behind it. I pulled another spear from my sole weapon. The orcs had no idea where my weapons were coming from, and hurled it at the leader. He deflected it with his axe, but it grazed his face. Then I yanked wooden tables out of storage and dropped them into the stairwell, jamming the passage. While they scrambled over the furniture, I threw a short spear and dropped another one. 3 down, 3 left. The leader looked at his 2 wounded companions, then at me standing above them in full armor, and made his call. He's a human knight. Run. All 3 turned and fled out the gate. I wasn't about to let them go. 3 wounded orcs on foot against a mounted knight in armor? I ran to the stable, jumped on the chestnut horse, and rode after them. The first one, the one with an arrow in its thigh, was the slowest. I galloped past and swung my sword. Its head came off clean. The second one heard the hoofbeats, turned, and knew it couldn't outrun me. It stopped and raised its spiked club. I pulled a spear from storage at full gallop and threw it. The orc never even finished its swing. The spear punched through its chest. The leader ran all the way to the edge of my pasture, where it found its path blocked. John and about a dozen farmers were standing in the road, holding whatever weapons they had. Trapped between them and me, it turned to face me. It figured one-on-one was better than being hit from both sides. I dismounted and drew my sword. It came at me swinging that big axe in wild, furious arcs. I dodged left, dodged right, giving ground, letting it burn through its remaining energy. When the swing started slowing, I moved. I slipped inside its guard and cut off its axe arm at the elbow. The arm and the axe flew through the air and landed in the grass. It stumbled back, blood spraying, and croaked in human speech. Mercy. Mercy. I closed the distance and took its head. I stood over the body, breathing hard. The armor was heavy. The fight had drained me, but every one of them was dead. All 10 orcs who'd attacked this territory, finished. Behind me, John and the farmers had watched the whole thing. John came running over and threw himself on the ground at my feet. My lord, you killed the orcs. You're a real knight. The farmers followed, kneeling, babbling praise. I waved them up. John, take these people and clean up the bodies. Keep anything useful, burn the rest. John's head snapped up. Through the helmet visor, he finally recognized me. You're Alan, get to work. I climbed back on the horse and rode toward my cabin, their cheering fading behind me. I stumbled back into my cabin, legs shaking, arms numb from the fighting. I'd killed 10 orcs total, but I was exhausted. If I'd faced someone like the Bone Crusher Kagul, I'd have been dead in seconds. I still had a long way to go. I cooked myself a pot of meat porridge and sat by the fire, staring at the flames. John came to the door with a deerskin bag of loot from the orc bodies. I barely looked at it. Instead, I told him the truth. Northwind Fortress fell last night. The Valley Baron opened the gates for the orcs. The Black Pine Baron fled south. This land has no lord anymore. John's face went white. He was trembling on his knees. If you want my protection, I said, you give me everything, including your souls. He didn't hesitate. His forehead hit the ground. I told him to bring everyone. A dozen people gathered outside my cabin, thin, ragged, terrified. I put on the helmet, drew my sword, and stood before them. They knelt and repeated the oath after John, word by word. Their lives, their property, their children, all mine. In return, I would protect them. I sheathed the sword and looked at these skinny, frightened people who now belonged to me. We eat lunch at the castle today, I said. Black Pine Castle belongs to us now. They erupted in cheers. We marched to town with 2 ox carts. The place was devastated, bodies everywhere, buildings burned and broken. I rode through it all without stopping. At the castle, I gave orders. 2 people cook. Everyone else haul bodies to the town square and burn them. Collect every piece of iron and every usable weapon. Fix the broken gate. By nightfall, they'd done all of it. They even found a few children hiding in cellars around town. I stood on the castle tower watching the funeral pyre light up the square and felt something settle inside me. I'm going to be a lord, I whispered. Starting today, I called John over and told him to send people to every farming village in the area at dawn. The message: the orcs broke through, the nobles ran, and anyone who wants to survive can either hide or come swear loyalty to me. Then I went to the Baron's old bedroom, lay down on a real bed for the first time in months, and fell asleep instantly. At dawn, I checked the intelligence. First, after the fortress fell, the nobles and merchants of Northwind City fled in panic. The young son of the Northwind Viscount, a boy named Edmund, was chased by orcs during his escape. He got separated from his guards and fell off his horse near the coastal village, dying on impact. He'd been carrying 3 bottles of Battle Aura Awakening Potion, medicine that helps apprentice knights break through. Second, the Silver Moon Trading Company's fleet was pioneering a new sea route. One of their 2-masted cargo ships had hit a reef and beached itself at the coastal village this afternoon. The company's manager had heard the Baron once bought a single-mast sailboat and was interested in selling shipwrights and helmsmen. Third, the Bone Crusher Kagul and his wolf cavalry were circling behind the Red Maple Earl's territory to surround it. The rest of the orc forces would rest at Northwind City for 3 days, then sweep through every noble territory in the area. 3 days. That's all I had. I stood up and looked west, toward the coast. Out there, waiting for me, breakthrough potions and a beached ship. I rode the chestnut horse hard toward the coast, searching the hills north of the coastal village for the dead Viscount's son. Around 3 in the afternoon, I found hoofprints near some bushes and followed them over 2 hills to a steep slope. A white horse lay at the bottom with a broken neck. Nearby, a boy of 15 or 16, Edmund, sprawled in the grass, body twisted, face white, dead from the fall. I checked the area carefully before approaching, poking the grass with a spear, turning the body over. I searched his clothes, his hair, his pockets. Nothing but a coin purse with gold still in it, so nobody had looted him. The potions had to be hidden somewhere clever. Then I remembered. The intelligence said, in his chest. I pulled out the armor I'd already stripped off him and ran my fingers along the inside lining, inch by inch. There, in a hidden layer, 3 thumb-sized crystal vials filled with pale golden liquid. Battle Aura Awakening Potions. I stored them in my soul weapon. These would be for future followers worth investing in. Then I rode to the coast. On the beach, a man named Edwin, manager of the Silver Moon Trading Company, was pacing back and forth in a panic. One of his 3 cargo ships had hit a reef and run aground. Water was flooding the hold, and he needed to unload before the tide came in. He saw me galloping toward him in full knight's armor and sent for his 3 escort knights, just in case. When I dismounted and took off my helmet, he was shocked at how young I was. I asked what they were selling. He handed me a list: grain, beer, cloth, salt, ironwork, slaves. I shook my head. I didn't have enough gold for a big purchase, but I told him my name, Alan Chinching. If we ever met again, I'd be happy to call him a friend. He offered to accept payment in minerals, magical materials, or anything valuable. I shook my head again. You came too late, I said. The orcs broke through Northwind Fortress last night. This whole region is about to fall. They'll sweep through here in days. He didn't believe me at first. Then one of his own scouts came riding back in a panic, confirming everything. The Baron had fled. The castle had been attacked and recaptured by a knight named Alan, and the roads were littered with bodies, human and orc alike. Edwin's face went pale. He looked at me with new eyes. "You took the castle back from the orcs. Are you planning to stay here?" I nodded. "Every lord in this area has abandoned their land and run. If I wanted to claim a territory for myself, how would I do it?" Edwin thought for a moment, then laid it out. 1,000 gold coins buys you a pioneering charter from the duchy. Then you take land from the orcs yourself and hold it for 3 years. After 3 years, you become a baron. Sounds simple enough? Simple? He almost laughed. First you need 1,000 gold coins. Then you need an army you can feed. Then you need 1,000 acres of farmland cleared and planted. And you need to survive 3 years of orc attacks. Fail at any one of those, and you lose everything. I stared at the orange sunset over the sea, letting the wind blow across my face. "It's getting late," I said. "Would you rather sleep at the castle or stay here with your cargo? If you don't mind, the castle sounds much safer." I mounted up and we rode for Black Pine Castle together, Edwin and a few of his guards trailing behind me in the fading light. Edwin followed me into the castle and nearly gagged on the smell. Blood and ash hung in the air like fog. "How many died here?" he asked. "A few hundred." "And how many orcs?" 10. He couldn't believe it. 10 orcs killed hundreds of people. I told him the truth. People enslaved their whole lives don't know how to fight back. When the lords ran, the farmers just knelt and waited to die. He offered to have his 3 escort knights help guard the castle. I waved him off. All 10 orcs were already dead. I killed them myself. He stared at me for a long time after that. At dinner, he handed me the trade list again with a 50% discount on everything. I took it and thanked him, but told him honestly, if things went bad, I'd have to retreat too. At midnight, the intelligence gave me 4 pieces. First, there was an island about 30 kilometers northwest of the coast, roughly 16 kilometers across, with mountains and a small iron mine. In a valley at its center grew a magical fruit called chi-replenishing fruit that could restore energy and nourish battle aura. Second, among Edwin's slaves were 1 shipwright who could repair ocean vessels, and 5 former apprentice knights whose potential had been exhausted, so their masters sold them off. If I fed them the chi-replenishing fruit to restore their energy, then gave them the battle aura awakening potions, they could break through to Black Iron Knight. Third, Edwin was lying awake all night, torn between running and staying, worried about the orcs, the damaged ship, and whether to back me as a new noble. He'd eventually decide to abandon the beached ship and leave quickly. A small gesture from me would be enough to get the ship. Fourth, panicked refugees were fleeing everywhere. Some farmhands had heard a knight was offering protection. Tomorrow, dozens of people would arrive at Black Pine Town seeking shelter under me. I smiled, rolled over, and slept soundly. The next morning at breakfast, I played it carefully. I told Edwin I wanted to buy 1,000 pounds of grain. He pushed for more. I held up one finger. 100 gold coins, that's all I had. He did the math out loud. Grain was cheap. 1 gold coin bought 5,000 pounds at his discounted price. He pushed iron, cloth, salt. I took all the iron and all the cloth. Then I asked about the slaves. He offered the shipwright and the 5 former knights for 10 gold coins. I agreed. "What else do you have that's actually useful?" I said. "Don't mention beer. I'm trying to build a territory, not throw a party." He paused. I told him what I really needed, a ship. He was confused at first. I pointed north and said if the orcs could come south, I needed a way to go north, by sea, around the fortress they'd captured. His eyes lit up. Then he offered me the beached 2-masted cargo ship. A new one would cost 500 gold. This one, damaged and stuck on the sand, 50 gold coins, with a few sailors included. "Why so cheap?" I asked. "You told me to leave quickly. The ship isn't fixed. I can't take it. Better to sell it cheap than lose it to orcs. Consider it thanks for the warning." I laughed, pulled out a purse, and dropped 100 gold coins on the table. "Take it all. The ship, the slaves, the iron, the cloth, the grain. Whatever's left over, throw in whatever you think is useful." Edwin was beaming. As he stood to leave, he made me a promise. "Next year, I'll come back, and I'll bring you a pioneering charter." We rowed together to the coast. His men unloaded my goods while the 2 remaining ships prepared to sail. The 6 slaves stood in a line with their heads down, 1 shipwright, and 5 broken knights who didn't know their lives were about to change. Edwin bowed from the deck. "Until we meet again, Sir Alan, until we meet again." The sails rose and the 2 ships pulled away from shore, growing smaller against the gray winter sea. I watched Edwin's ships shrink to dots on the horizon, then turned to face my 6 new slaves. Kneel and swear loyalty. They did, mumbling the oath like dead men walking. No fire, no spirit, just broken people going through the motions. I pointed at the oldest one. You're the shipwright? His name was Jelen. 35 years at a shipyard called Whitesail Dock. Built 12 merchant vessels, repaired countless more. I pointed at the beached ship and told him to fix it. He stammered that he could do it and ran off toward the sand. Then I looked at the 5 former apprentice knights. I don't care about your past, I said. Your strength is nothing special, just apprentice knight level. But I can give you a new chance. I can help you become Black Iron Knights. Their eyes lit up instantly. Too quickly. I asked them what it took to break through. One of them, the oldest, said it required strong blood and vital energy. They'd been sold because their energy had declined. Really? I pressed. Even weakened apprentice knights are better than ordinary farmers. No one sells 5 trained fighters cheap without a reason. He hesitated, then admitted they'd all been guards for the Silver Moon Trading Company. Some young noble got crippled on their watch, and they were punished. Their captain was sold to a fighting pit and died within 3 days. I studied their faces. 5 guards from the same company, trained together, lived together for years, and Edwin just happened to sell them to me at half price. The story about being punished was probably half true at best. These 5 were almost certainly planted by the Silver Moon Company to watch me, report on me, and steer me in whatever direction suited their interests. Edwin's enthusiasm, the convenient discount, the abandoned ship, it all clicked together. He wasn't just being generous. He was investing in me. And these 5 were the strings attached. I didn't call them out. Instead, I smiled and told them to go help repair the ship. Whatever happened before, I don't care, I said. Follow my orders, do good work, earn rewards. They bowed and ran off to the beach. Standing alone, I thought about control. My soul weapon had the power to enslave living beings. That ability had been woven into the Emperor's banner during the forging. I hadn't tested it yet, but I could feel it there, waiting. It required a Black Iron Knight's blood seal to activate. Jelen came running back with good news. The ship's damage was minor, just a broken hull plank, and there were spare boards already on the ship. He asked for 5 days. Too long. I need to sail today. His jaw dropped. I pointed at the 5 knights on the ship. Tell them whoever works the hardest gets a battle aura awakening potion. Jelen sprinted back, shouting the offer across the beach. The 5 men froze for half a second, then exploded into action, ripping boards, hammering, hauling timber like their lives depended on it. Which, in a way, they did. I watched them work and laughed quietly. So that's how it is. Edwin plants his people around me, invests in me cheap, and thinks he's buying himself a puppet lord on this coast. Convenient harbor, no tolls, a tame knight who owes him everything. I shook my head. Fine, we'll use each other. You think you're controlling me? I'm planning to enslave you. Let's see who plays this game better. I turned northwest, toward the sea. Out there, 30 kilometers from shore, sat an island with mountains, an iron mine, and a valley full of magical fruit that could restore what these broken knights had lost. First the island, then the breakthroughs, then everything else. Jelen reported the broken plank was replaced, but he couldn't guarantee the rest of the hull was sound without a full inspection. I told him to push the ship into the water. We were leaving now. An hour of sailing northwest, and the island appeared, a dark shape rising from the sea. We circled it looking for a way in. Almost the entire coast was sheer cliff and jagged rock. Only one small beach on the south side offered any chance of landing. I had the crew drop me on the beach in a rowboat and told Jelen to sail around the island, mapping it, where you could land, where you could farm. I found a cave hidden behind vines in a rock crevice and squeezed through. After a short walk, the passage opened into a hidden valley, sheer walls on every side, completely cut off from the world. I crept forward through dead leaves, sword drawn, watching everything. Then I saw it. A tree about 2 meters tall, green leaves, hung with a dozen egg-sized fruits that glowed in the sunlight. The cheer-replenishing fruit tree. I stepped forward and my foot crunched on something. I looked down. The ground around the tree was carpeted with bones. Layers of them, piled up over who knows how many years. Before I could figure out what killed all these creatures, a massive eagle screamed from above and dove straight at me, talons out. I charged forward, leaped into the air to meet it, and split it in two with a single vertical slash. Both have crashed to the ground behind me. Just a regular bird. Not even a magical beast. The bones were probably just its prey over the years. Then I noticed thin tendrils hanging from the tree's branches, and similar threads tangled around the dead eagle's claws. One of the unripe fruits on the tree had started turning red, right where eagle blood had splashed. The tree fed on blood to ripen its fruit. That explained the bone pile. Animals came for the fruit, got caught by the tendrils, bled dry, and the tree used their blood to grow more fruit. I decided to leave it alive. As long as it didn't attack on its own, it was too valuable to destroy. I picked the 3 ripest fruits and stored them in my soul weapon. Deeper in the valley, I found a flat rock and sat down. I pulled out one fruit and bit into it. Soft, warm, melting on my tongue. A surge of heat flooded through me, filling every inch of muscle and bone. My body felt like it was growing, expanding, strengthening, becoming more. Energy began seeping from my flesh into my battle aura. The blue vortex in my dantian started pulling it in, and the aura took on a faint red tinge, blood and spirit mixing together. I ate the second fruit. The red-tinged aura exploded upward through my spine, crashed through my spiritual sea, and poured back into the vortex. Body, energy, and mind fused together in that moment. My battle aura now carried my consciousness, my will. I ate the third. Inside the vortex, all that unified energy suddenly collapsed inward and condensed into a single brilliant speck, tiny as a grain of dust, but blazing with light. It pulsed like a heartbeat, drawing more and more aura into itself, growing from a pinpoint to the size of a sesame seed. It hung in the center of the vortex, stable and steady. I opened my eyes and clenched my fist. The power inside me was completely different now. I drew my sword and willed the aura outward. Blue energy flowed from my core, through my arm, and out through the blade. Not just inside the metal, but coating the surface, visible, glowing, real. Battle aura projection, the hallmark of a bronze knight. Before this, I could push aura into a weapon but never threw it. Now, with consciousness woven into my aura, it responded to my thoughts like an extension of my body. I swung the sword, and a brilliant arc of blue light traced through the air. This is what a real knight feels like. I sheathed the sword and headed back. When I passed the fruit tree, I left the remaining unripe ones alone. They'd be ready when I needed them. Back on the ship, Jelen confirmed what I expected. The island was nothing but cliffs and rocks except for that one beach. No other place to land or farm. I told him to load some iron and grain onto the ship tonight. Tomorrow we'd go back to the island and start clearing land in the valley. Jelen's eyes widened. If there's farmable land on that island, it's the perfect stronghold. The orcs can take the mainland, and they still can't touch you. I waved him off. Don't get ahead of yourself. For now, it's just a place to hide. Then I told him to ask the coastal village farmers tonight if any of them wanted to swear loyalty and come with us. Following you would be their honor, he said. I looked at him and said nothing. Honor had nothing to do with it. Survival did. I rode through the night back to the castle. The next morning's intelligence brought urgent news. First, a gray bear in the forest near my home village had been eating moonlight grass and evolved into a first-rank magical beast during hibernation. It was starving and would attack the village today. Second, the orcs had betrayed the Valley Baron, the man who'd opened the fortress gates for them. They cut him down like prey. Now they were sweeping south, and a 10-man orc squad would reach Black Pine Castle this afternoon, killing everyone in their path. Third, the chi-replenishing fruit tree was a first-rank magical plant. Its tendrils actively sought blood within a certain range. I had to move fast. Downstairs, John reported that 57 refugees had arrived overnight seeking my protection, 35 of them able-bodied. I told him to feed everyone breakfast, then march straight to the coastal village. I'd found an island with an iron mine where they could shelter. Don't wait for me. I had something to handle first. I rode for my home village. On the way, my thoughts were complicated. Since awakening my past life memories, I kept my distance from my family in this life. Not because I didn't care, but because I was afraid of revealing too much. Now I was a bronze knight with the power to protect them. It was time to bring them to safety. I heard the roar before I saw it. A massive gray bear burst from the forest, first shimmering with a cold light, eyes burning red with hunger. It spotted a farmer working nearby and crushed his skull with one swipe before he could even scream. Then it picked up the body and started eating. People scattered in every direction, screaming. I hurled a spear from horseback, It punched into the bear's back. The beast roared and charged at me. I kicked off the saddle, launched myself into the air, and brought my sword down with battle aura blazing along the blade. Wind-breaking slash. The bear swung the half-eaten corpse at me like a club. My sword cut through its right paw at the wrist. Blood sprayed everywhere. I landed, stepped forward, and slashed through its left leg. It crashed to the ground, thrashing, whimpering, terrified. One more step. One more swing. The head rolled free. The villagers stopped running. They stared. Then they started cheering. The Baron saved us. Thank the Baron. They assumed anyone in full knight's armor must be their lord. I took off my helmet. It's me. Alan. Silence. Then whispers. Alan? Jolan's little brother. Why is he wearing the Baron's armor? He stole it. He'll be hanged. Take it off. That's not yours to wear. I ignored all of them and walked straight to my parents, who stood frozen, staring at me. I'm home. Alan, are you hurt? I'm fine. I'm a knight now. A knight? Where's your brother? Where's Jolan? He went north with the Baron to defend the fortress. The fortress fell. He escaped with the Baron. They ran south. The crowd erupted. Panic, disbelief, shouting. I gripped my parents' hands. Father, mother, I bought a ship. I can take people to an island where it's safe. I looked around at the crowd. Anyone who's willing to follow my orders can come. Go pack. You have half an hour. People argued, doubted, hesitated. Some were still processing that their Baron had abandoned them. I'd had enough. I reached into my soul and pulled out the Emperor's banner. The banner unfurled in my hand, and pale blue light poured from it, washing over the dead bear. The massive carcass shriveled before their eyes, a shadowy form. The bear's spirit thrashed and fought, but the light dragged it inch by inch into the banner's surface until it vanished. Every single person went silent. Some dropped to their knees. Some covered their mouths. Some shook so hard they couldn't stand. I put the banner away. Not one person in that crowd could meet my eyes. They all lowered their heads, trembling. I took my mother's trembling hand and walked home. The old thatched house, the broken fence. It felt like a lifetime ago since I'd sat here sharpening arrowheads. I sat my parents down and gave them a simple version of what happened. Found a gold coin cleaning the stable. Found a book with a battle aura method by the garden pool. Bought a magical beast bone from a traveler. Made soup from it. Got stronger and stumbled into a breakthrough. My mother kept making prayer signs. My father frowned and said breakthroughs don't just happen by accident. Jolan had trained for years and never even reached apprentice knight. He had no teacher, I said. Neither did I. But I had luck. Half an hour later, I let everyone out, my parents and about a dozen villagers who decided to follow. We marched to the coastal village where the rest of my people were already gathered. Over 100 people crammed onto the ship. An hour's sailing brought us to the island. I told them to build shelters and do what they wanted with the land. I'd be taking it all back from the orcs eventually. Then I took the 5 former apprentice knights into the valley to the replenishing fruit tree. This is a first-rank magical plant, I told them. When the fruit ripens, it can restore your blood and energy to peak condition. I have 2 bottles of Battle Aura Awakening Potion. Whoever earns it gets to become a Black Iron Knight. They drop to their knees instantly. We'll be the sword in your hand. Point us anywhere and we'll kill. I showed them the eagle bones on the ground and explained that animal blood made the fruit ripen faster. They needed to hunt and feed the tree, but never with human blood. They swore obedience and scattered to work. I walked deeper into the valley and sat on the same rock where I'd broken through to Bronze Knight. I pulled out the Emperor's banner. Inside, the gray bear's soul was still thrashing and howling, fighting its prison. I flooded the banner with battle aura, wrapping the soul in invisible chains until it compressed into a small pearl and sank into the fabric. Information flowed into my mind. By taking a person's blood and hair, I could bind them through the banner, controlling their life and death, and even guide their battle aura to take on the bear's characteristics. The bear had gained its power by eating moonlight grass over many years, so it had no true magical bloodline and limited potential. But its raw physical strength was enormous, perfect for turning those 5 knights into something useful. I practiced wind-breaking slash until sunset. When the 5 came back from a failed fishing trip, they'd only caught a few fish. I didn't scold them. Instead, I told them I had a gift. I tossed a wooden bowl on the ground. Pull out some hair. Drip some blood from your fingertips. They looked at each other nervously, but didn't dare ask questions. Each one yanked out a few hairs, bit their finger, and let the blood drip into the bowl. The leader carried it to me on his knees. I took the bowl and stored it in my soul weapon. Their eyes went wide. From today, I give you new names. The power I'm granting you is the bear's strength, so you'll carry the name bear. I pointed at each one in turn. Bear 1, Bear 2, Bear 3, Bear 4, Bear 5. They bowed their heads to the ground. Thank you, Master, for the honor. The moment they spoke, I felt it, a strange current flowing from my spiritual sea through invisible threads into their bodies. It began merging with their flesh, changing them from the inside. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that if I willed it, I could stop any of their hearts with a single thought. This was my soul weapon's power, the enslavement of living beings. I smiled. Go eat. Plenty of meat these next few days. You'll need it. They kowtowed and backed away, then turned and walked out of the valley. They had no idea what had just been planted inside them. A piercing eagle scream ripped me out of sleep in the middle of the night. I grabbed my sword and listened. The cries echoed through the valley. Angry, mournful, savage. Bear 3 ran to my tent. Something in the valley, Master. Sounds like an eagle. Stay hidden. Don't let it see you. I checked the intelligence. First, a first-rank late-stage magical beast called a gale eagle had returned from hunting to find its mate dead, the one-eyed killed yesterday. It had picked up human scent and was hiding near the cheer-replenishing fruit tree, waiting to ambush anyone who came close. Up on the cliff above the valley, in a crack in the rock wall, was the eagle's nest. 3 chicks would hatch today. When grown, each one could become at least a first-rank magical beast. If tamed, they'd be valuable aerial fighters. Second, the Red Maple Earl's territory had fallen. The Earl died fighting. The Grand Duke of the realm had issued a call to arms. All nobles must send troops to drive the orcs back. Anyone who answered would earn double military merit. Anyone who fled would be punished severely after the war. Northern nobles who distinguished themselves in the counterattack could avoid charges. Third, the Blackpine Baron and other lords who'd abandoned their territories had been stripped of their titles. The Grand Duke ordered them to lead the first wave of the counterattack to redeem themselves. If they failed or ran again, their entire families would be executed. Fourth, the island's iron mine was on the east side of the beach, an open-pit deposit with dark red rock and no vegetation covering it. The eagle had to die, not just because it wanted revenge, but because I needed that fruit tree. As long as it lived, nobody could get near the fruit safely. At dawn, I gathered my 5 bear knights and told them the plan. 4 would hide with fishing nets on both sides of the tree. 1 would walk up to the tree as bait. When the eagle dove, they'd throw the nets. Bear 1 walked toward the tree and reached for a fruit. The eagle screamed and plunged from the cliff like a black arrow. Bear 1 rolled clear. Now, 2 nets flew up from both sides. The gale eagle twisted in midair and slipped through the gap. Only 1 rope caught its leg for a second before snapping free. It circled once, then dove straight at me, the biggest threat. I swung. My sword clashed against its talons with a shower of sparks. The impact shoved me back. This thing was far stronger than the ordinary eagle I'd killed yesterday. I sheathed my aura and fought with just the blade, letting it think I was weaker than I was, drawing it in for repeated dives. Each time it swept down, the bear knights tried to net it. Each time, it dodged. Then on one dive, it came in too fast and too low. All 5 nets went up at once. It crashed into them and got tangled, just for a moment. That moment was enough. I poured battle aura into my sword and lunged forward. Wind-breaking slash. The eagle's head separated from its body in a spray of blood. The headless carcass hung in the nets for a heartbeat, then crashed to the ground. I stood over it, breathing hard, and laughed. First rank late stage. Not bad, but not enough. I pulled out the Emperor's banner and absorbed the gale eagle's soul right in front of the 5 bear knights. They watched the massive carcass shrivel up as a thrashing shadow was dragged into the banner's fabric. Their excitement turned to horror. I smiled at them gently. Don't be afraid. Your blood and hair are in here too. As long as you obey, all you'll receive is power. I paused, looking at the dried-out eagle corpse on the ground. But if you disobey, you'll end up like that. Your soul blood is mine. No matter where you hide, even 1,000 miles away, I can rip out your soul with a single thought. And a person without a soul, all 5 hit the ground at the same time. We will prove our loyalty with our lives. We will never disobey. I nodded and sent them up the cliff to find the eagle's nest. They climbed like lizards, searching every crack. Meanwhile, I compressed the eagle's soul into a pearl inside the banner, same as the bear before it. I tried to pick up the eagle's bones, thinking I could use them to upgrade my soul weapon. The moment I touched the skeleton, it crumbled to dust. Useless after the soul extraction. Good to know. My father was waiting outside the valley, looking uncomfortable. He asked if it was warmer inside. The sea wind on the beach was cutting through the flimsy tents. I called John over and told him to widen the cave entrance so everyone could move into the valley. But I warned him, nobody touches the fruit tree inside. I told my father I'd already sent someone to the capital to arrange a pioneering charter. Once it came through, I'd be a baron, and our whole family would be nobility. He could barely believe it. I told him to pick some people as personal servants. He was going to need them. Then I went to find the iron mine. I climbed over the coastal rocks on the island's east side until I found a patch of dark red stone, just like the intelligence described. But it was tiny, barely 100 meters across in any direction, almost perfectly circular. I chipped off a piece with a hammer. Incredibly heavy. The cross-section was pure metallic shine, almost no impurities at all. Is this iron ore? Or just iron? I tested a few more pieces. Same thing. I probed with battle aura. Dense, pure metal all the way through. This wasn't a natural formation. It was too round, too pure, too isolated. Something was buried under it. I wanted to dig, but held myself back. I had people now. Let them do the dangerous work. When I got back to the beach, the 5 bear knights were kneeling with eagle eggs cupped in their hands. Not 3 like the intelligence said, 5. They'd found 2 nests, not 1. 3 gray-brown eggs and 2 pale blue ones. They saw me frown and nearly fainted with fear. I let them sweat for a moment, then relaxed. Bear 5 said he'd once raised a hawk, not a magical beast, just a regular bird, but he knew how to handle raptors. I gave him all 5 eggs. Then I assigned tasks. Bear 1 would lead combat training for the island's able-bodied people, with Bear 5 assisting. They'd also identify anyone with cultivation talent. Bears 2, 3, and 4 would go to the iron deposit and start breaking off ore. Stack it in place. I'd come collect it. Everyone had a job. Everyone scattered to work. I stood on the beach, watching my small, ragged kingdom take its first real shape. For half a month, I barely slept. Every morning before dawn, I took the ship out with a few sailors, following the intelligence to find dense schools of fish. We hauled net after net until we had mountains of smoked fish stacked in the new warehouse, enough to feed over 100 people through winter. I picked 30 of the strongest men from the refugees and started training them as soldiers. Every one of them, including Jelen and the sailors, gave me their soul blood. With plenty of fish to eat and hard daily training, those bony scarecrows started filling out fast. Then the intelligence brought the news I'd been waiting for. The Grand Duke had assembled 30,000 troops and launched a 3-pronged counterattack against the orcs. The Black Pine Baron and other disgraced northern nobles were forced into the vanguard as punishment, fight or die, along with their families. Meanwhile, the orc warriors occupying Northwind City were being pulled south to the front lines. An 80-person orc tribe was moving into Black Pine territory, but their fighters would leave tomorrow morning for the battle, leaving only the old, the women, and the children in camp. The second piece was about the iron mine. One of the chunks my men had dug out wasn't ordinary, or it was flesh from an iron dragon that had fallen in battle long ago. Despite the ages, it still had traces of life in it. I could use it to upgrade my soul weapon and give it living metal properties. Third, the Silver Moon Trading Company's leader, a woman named Elena, had approved Edwin's plan to back me. Through her grandfather, a marquis, she'd secured 3 pioneering charters. Edwin would travel with the army heading north, looking for me along the way. If I proved my worth in the counterattack, the charter would be mine. 3 charters meant she was hedging her bets, investing in multiple candidates. That was fine. I only needed 1. I called Bear 1 over and told him we were marching tomorrow. The orc fighters would be gone. We'd only face the weak ones left behind. Time to take Black Pine territory back. Then I realized we had no flag. You can't go to war without a banner. I had the women take down a tent, dye the cloth red with crushed mineral powder, and embroider a morning star in the center. My mother led the needlework herself. The stitching was rough, but the star shone bright against the red field. I told John to make as many flags as possible and plant them everywhere. We were few, so we needed to look like many. That evening, I went to the fruit tree. 2 more cheer-replenishing fruits had ripened. I picked them both and called Bear 1 to the valley. He knelt before me on the moonlit rock. "Tomorrow you lead the charge," I said. "I will cut through anything in your path, master. 100 deaths won't stop me. I tossed him one fruit and one bottle of Battle Aura Awakening Potion. Break through to Black Iron Knight. Right here, right now. He swallowed the fruit. Warmth flooded his body, restoring the blood and energy that years of decline had stolen. A vortex formed in his core, wobbling, nearly collapsing. He grabbed the potion and drank it in one gulp. Then he stood and began a slow, powerful set of basic combat forms. Every punch, every kick guided the wild energy inside him along fixed paths. Sweat poured down his face, veins bulged on his arms. I watched from my rock and understood. His method was different from mine, no written technique, just a body training system passed down in military ranks. Cruder than the noble version, slower, harder. But it worked. With a final punch, his whole body shuddered. The vortex in his core stabilized. He looked up at me with tears streaming down his face. Master, I did it. I'm a Black Iron Knight, I nodded. Go get used to your new strength. We fight tomorrow, he bowed, ran off into the darkness, and I could hear him shouting with joy. The other bear knights crowded around him, cheering. I sat on the rock, turning the last fruit over in my hand under the moonlight. Then I put it away and smiled. Tomorrow, we march. At dawn, I checked the intelligence one last time before we sailed. The orc tribe that had moved into Black Pine territory numbered 87. 35 fighters would leave around 10 this morning to join the main battle at Hope Plains. That left about 50, mostly old ones, women, and children. 20 elderly orcs guarded 400 human slaves scattered across the territory. 30 cutting grass near the hill pasture, 200 chopping wood around town, the rest doing labor elsewhere. And there was a prize, a captured gale wolf, a magical beast, pregnant and about to give birth. If I could take it alive and bind its pups with my soldiers through soul blood, I could eventually build wolf cavalry. I also learned about the iron dragon flesh from the mine. I found it among my men had stacked. A chunk of dark red metal with a texture like muscle fiber, edges torn and ragged. It looked exactly like a piece of raw meat made of iron. I placed it in my soul weapons crafting layer, where the yin-yang energy could slowly work on it. I loaded the ship with supplies and gave orders. Bear 5 stayed behind to guard the island and tend the eagle chicks. Bear 1 and Bear 2 took 20 soldiers as the advance force, land first, scout, and strike. Bear 3 stayed with me and 10 soldiers as the main body. Bear 4 would follow with 30 men handling supplies. We sailed for the mainland. By 2 in the afternoon, Bear 1 and Bear 2 had reached the tree line outside Black Pine Town. They watched 200 slaves working under the whips of orc guards, beaten, starving, moving like the living dead. 3 orcs were sleeping under a tree at the edge of town. Bear 1 and Bear 2 crept to within 10 paces and attacked simultaneously. 3 orcs dead in 3 heartbeats, stabbed, beheaded, throat cut. Not a sound. They sent soldiers to quietly pull slaves into the forest while they pushed deeper into town, picking off guards one by one. 7 more orcs killed silently. Then they moved on the castle. The gate was wide open. Orc women were hanging laundry in the courtyard, orc children running around playing. An old orc stepped out and raised a whip at the approaching group of slaves. Bear 1's sword went through its chest. Kill! The soldiers swarmed in. The fight lasted less than 15 minutes. Every orc that resisted was cut down. The rest, women and children, were tied up. By the time I rode through the gate, it was over. Bear 1 knelt before me. Behind him, over 300 freed slaves knelt too, not knowing what else to do. I had the soldiers collect hair and blood from every person, 10 to a bowl, 30-some bowls. I stored them all in my soul weapon. The soul pearls inside the Emperor's banner absorbed the new bonds. I could feel them filling up. 2 first-rank soul pearls could hold roughly 400 people before reaching their limit. Bear 1 reported 386 people total, 340 able-bodied men, 40 women, 1 blacksmith, 2 carpenters, a tailor, a brewer, a veterinarian. No children. I ordered all able-bodied men into the guard force. Then I had the 32 captured orcs brought forward. Their hair and blood went into bowls too. Once I felt the soul connection form through the banner, I acted. I pulled out the Emperor's banner. The water dragon on its surface writhed and glowed. 1 orc dropped dead without a sound. Its spirit was ripped free and sucked into the banner. The soul pearls expanded slightly. I killed them all at once. 32 bodies hit the ground simultaneously, 32 ghostly shadows streaming into the banner. The soul pearls trembled and grew a fraction larger. I put the banner away and looked at the 300 people staring at me in absolute terror. Your lives are in my hands. Serve me, and I'll give you strength. Betray me, and you'll end up like these orcs. Every single one of them pressed their forehead to the dirt. Make food, I said. These people need to eat. That night, I stood on the castle's highest tower with Bear 1, watching for the orc patrol from the hill pasture. A scout had ridden back earlier to report 5 orcs and 30 human slaves there, rounding up cattle and sheep. I told Bear 1 to prepare an ambush, total annihilation, no survivors. He positioned over 200 newly enlisted soldiers around the town and castle, disguised as laborers. We waited. Hours passed. The road from the pasture stayed empty. Bear 1 came back up, anxious. They haven't come, Master. Do you think they spotted something? I told him no, probably just an unexpected delay. Set up a night watch and wait until morning. But standing alone on that tower, staring into the dark, I felt something I'd never felt before. Uncertainty. Since the system activated, I'd always known what was coming. The intelligence told me everything. Who, when, where. For the first time, it hadn't predicted this change, and I was blind. I didn't like it at all. At midnight, the intelligence finally updated. First, an orc collection squad from the tribe occupying the valley territory had arrived at the hill pasture, demanding cattle, sheep, and slaves as tribute. The 5 orcs guarding the pasture didn't have authority to decide, so they'd invited the collectors to stay overnight. This morning, 8 orcs total would come to the castle to negotiate terms with the old tribe leader, who was now dead, though they didn't know that. 3 of the collectors were young, battle-ready warriors. Second, the Valley Orc tribe was large, 3,000 orcs, 2,000 human slaves. Over 1,000 of their fighters had already gone to the front lines, but they still had about 1,000 capable warriors at home. Third, the same tribe was planning to send 500 orcs and 1,000 slave soldiers to attack Black Mountain Baron, who was still holding out behind his castle walls. The attack was scheduled for 3 days from now. I exhaled slowly. Not as bad as I'd feared. The next morning, I had the soldiers pretend to be rebuilding the town as usual. Then I took the blacksmith, the carpenters, and a few former apprentices to Horg's old shop. Half of it had burned, but the forge and tools still worked. I told them to start making spears, 1 for every soldier. The blacksmith said he could do 300 in about 2 weeks. I gave him 3 days. He swore to work without sleep. While they were setting up, a burst of fighting erupted from the west side of town. It lasted only a few seconds, then silence. The craftsmen went pale. I waved them off. Don't worry, those orcs are already dead. But I felt a soul slip through the banner's connection into one of the soul pearls. One of my people had died in the fight. Bear 1 came running, covered in blood. 8 orcs had come, the 5 from the pasture plus 3 collectors. All dead, but we'd lost 1 man and had 5 wounded. One of the orc collectors had been surprisingly strong. I told him to give the dead man a proper burial and compensate his family if he had won. Treat the wounded well. Then I gave him the next order. Bring everyone and everything from the hill pasture back to town. Get these new soldiers fed, rested, and trained in basic formation fighting as fast as possible. In a few days, I said, we're going to the valley territory. Yes, master. He turned and ran to make it happen.